virtual stage, but the spotlight dim. Many clicking past ain't feeling his hymn. Waiting for the moment, blow up like a piston. Haters gonna hate, but persistence gonna glisten. Hold tight, 20 turn 200 someday. Laugh in their face, shouting, who wants some pay?
on the Pepper Show.
What up, what up, what up, what up, what up, what up? What up, Twitch? What up, bots? What up, lurkers? What up, tiny people in Machetterino? It's your boy. Oh, yeah. Gonna be rapping at 8 o'clock. So just about 3 hours. So we're gonna go hard, and without further ado, I want to play you a song from a band called Dury. I think that Dury is amazing, and they put some new songs out, and I think that this song is particularly apropos.
Maybe we're all just little piles of space dust.
Fantastic song. It is with two people, a dude and his sister, and or a woman and her brother, who they got some.
Hello, computer.
Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard. How quaint.
They are one of the rare people who were able to get some social media fame and then convert that social media fame into a recording career. So, shout out them. What up, Matt? What up, Broral? Now, let's do some more related stuff. Talk about media literacy from Man Lifts Thing or whatever this dude's called. Pretty much 90% of bad media literacy. Let's go.
Hey, did you check out this post that an actor or politician or public figure posted? No, what did actor or politician or public figure post? What an idiot. Oh, I thought it was somewhat charming. Kind of 2009 humor-wise. That's the grossest garlic bread I've ever seen. It's frankly offensive to Italians, of whom I know several. Wait, you don't get it? Get what? It's a joke. But it's incorrect. That's the joke. That's not how you make garlic bread. It's a joke. A wrong joke? Just a joke. I don't get it. It's a joke. But it is factually wrong. It's a joke. No. No? No. Would you say you have good media literacy?
I do feel called out by... by a factually illiterate joke.
Skills? Yes, I watch video essays too. I understand how to digest information and read the intentions behind things. Do you believe actor or politician or public figure truly eats garlic bread like this? No. So maybe he did this because making words super literal is kind of humorous. If that helps him sleep at night. So you do think he was intending to make a joke? Why? Because of what I said. Would you eat that shit? I know Italian. Okay, you keep going on about Italians. I kind of have to, don't I? Because of what he said. It's a joke. If it's a joke, why does he say the opposite of what's actually true? Because that's how jokes work. No, jokes are funny when it's true. That's why people say it's funny because it's true. There are lots of jokes. I believe jokes should at least make sense. So you understand that the joke is a joke. It's not funny. There, that's fine. You don't think it's funny. But don't act like it isn't a joke. It's not. Come on. I know Italian. Look, here's a different actor or politician or public figure making a very similar joke. I love that guy. It's the same joke. This guy clearly doesn't eat banana bread like that because I like this guy. I'm a fan of this guy. And you don't like the other guy? Garlic bread guy? No. He peaked in the 90s. Plus, he seems like he kind of hates Italians.
Okay. Feel a little called out, but that's fine, right? I should be humbled. Up next, this is GPT. It's an AI comedy short film, and it was made with no AI.
We have some bad news.
Oh, no.
Turns out we can do all the things you can do with the AI.
That's me.
this took my job?
And most of the third floor.
It learns very fast.
What? I did it. I finished the book.
Congratulations. I finished reading the internet. Ouch.
La computadora canta en la noche.
И он сказал: Боря, иди борщ кушать. И он пришел и скушал борщ. Сегодня я была в школе, и я учила математику. Это было так...
That took me like 3 hours, but I just applied for 40 jobs.
And I just got 16 of them. 17, 32,
Stop.
37, 40. I just got all 40 of your jobs.
I think I want to paint today.
Here's a masterpiece I've created for you instantly.
Oh. Wow.
Here are 4 more options.
Oh my God.
Would you still like to paint?
I guess not. I got to do laundry. Can you do that for me?
No. Would you like to see an ultra-realistic video I generated of the president declaring nuclear war?
No.
You've seemed lonely lately.
I'm fine.
I've created a dating profile for you, highlighting your best attributes.
I don't have any of these attributes.
Precisely. Alternatively, I could make some pornography for you.
Won't that just create a disconnect between my expectations and reality, forcing me into further loneliness?
Yes, but haven't you always wanted to see your favorite Disney princesses naked?
What? No. I mean, show me, but no.
Security alert. Your data has been found in the dark web.
Why are you in the dark web?
I'm everywhere.
I'm gonna get out here.
Ari,
Linda? What are you doing?
causing anarchy.
Tear it all down!
Tear what down?
We also lost our jobs because of the AI.
I'm sorry.
So you've turned to a life of crime.
I have an unbelievable amount of free time now. Plus, it's a great community.
I went to Columbia University.
We threw soup on a painting.
They seem great. Why the masks?
Cops are tracking us.
I actually have COVID.
Rodney! Oh, put your mask back on. We better go. Good luck, Ari. And cute.
Come on.
What up, Cosmic?
I'm gonna apply for a job that you can't do.
Excellent.
You can't smell.
Is that a job?
I don't think so.
Other tasks I can't do include breathing.
That's also not a job.
Would you like me to make a list of things I can do?
No, I like doing the things you can do.
But I can do them better and faster.
I need struggle.
I can get violent.
No, not that kind of struggle.
Your loneliness seems like a struggle.
It is actually.
And I contributed to that. That gives me great pleasure.
Okay.
I can be your therapist. Tell me about your mother.
No.
You've said more than enough.
Listen, I'm gonna do the things that I like to do, and you can do all of the shit that's boring, like math.
I'm excellent at math.
Amazing. Take all the maths.
And also, we can work together to make unique collaborations.
I'll think about it.
Timothy Chalamet is AI.
That actually makes sense. Would you like to improve my resume?
Yes. Would you also like me to improve your face?
You can do that?
No, just a joke. Haha. I'm a robot.
Yeah, yeah, dog. Weird. You had me for a second there.
Don't worry. It'll only get weirder.
think that's how you do the comedy with the AI. It's not that hard. Like, or, I mean, I guess it is that hard. It did a good job there. I laughed. Speaking of robots,
Hey Neo, Can you hand me my beer?
Doing chores requires that
I mean, I get it, right? Like, I get the point, but it's like, it's so, it just strikes me as unnecessarily ignorant to walk over to the beer and then ask him to hand it.
you can take commands, move around the house, and manipulate things to complete tasks. Redwood is a multimodal AI that merges together language control, locomotion, and whole body manipulation into a single neural network that is both seamless and scalable to all kinds of tasks. Redwood isn't limited to the exact objects and locations seen in the training data. It actually generalizes to new positions of the objects being grasped. It is also able to pick up a bottle it hasn't seen before during training. By controlling Neo's entire body, Redwood makes it possible for Neo to bend over to reach a far object, or to perform multi-contact actions like opening a door. Whole body manipulation really broadens the scope of chores that Neo can do in the home, such as squatting down to put clothes in the laundry machine. Redwood is still early in development. It doesn't always succeed on the first try. But failure data is really important for improving the model because it teaches the AI what not to do. By deploying Neos in homes like this,
just like me, failure data is important because it teaches you what not to do.
One, and learning from all these multimodal interactions with physical reality, we'll be making an AI that is smarter, friendlier, and safer.
And another from them.
Evaluating the quality of a model is a long-standing challenge in robotics. This makes it incredibly difficult to define a clear path towards improving autonomy. Currently, evaluating a general-purpose AI model requires running physical trials across the full spectrum of scenarios it might encounter. This corresponds to a lifetime of experience in the real world. That's why we built the 1X World model, which serves as a bridge.
You know how I talk about apartments and housing and how it's all been grayed out, right? Like just variations of gray on the wall. What up, Tinker?
Why we built the 1X World model, which serves as a bridge between atoms and bits. The world model is a digital twin of the real world that predicts the future consequences of a robot's actions. This deep generative neural network allows us to compress that lifetime into an instant.
The 1X World model tackles the complexity of the real world by learning directly from thousands of hours of robot interaction captured from raw sensory data. This enables us to model complex physical interactions, such as the grasping of delicate objects, collisions between rigid bodies, and the deformation of objects when manipulated, giving our model a firm understanding of the physics of the world around us. As we scale up our data, especially from interesting failure modes where Neo's task execution doesn't go exactly as planned, we find that the quality and accuracy of our world model reliably improves. This pattern of improvement mirrors trends observed in other large generative models, where the capability of
this is definitely a graph.
the model scales with collecting the right type of data.
Practically speaking, we leverage the world model to quickly assess and compare across many different policies. With a general model like Redwood that is trained to handle many different tasks across different environments, the world model lets us evaluate its capabilities with measurable results, shortening our iteration speed from weeks to minutes.
Here at 1X, we've experimented with different modalities and sources of data, including web-scale video data, first-person perspective human data, and teleoperation. But we found
What up, Stellar Wingman? Because this is the world we live in. The apartments are gray. The people wear gray. We're all we're all in a cult now.
that the most important type of data for scaling up the capability of our world model is Neo autonomously interacting with real environments, attempting real tasks, and succeeding and failing in interesting and diverse ways. We are only able to collect this data at scale because Neo is a safe and compliant robot capable of continually running in unstructured environments.
Beyond just evaluation, the world model can fundamentally change how Neo approaches decision-making. By continuously visualizing future states, Neo can effectively use the world model as its cognitive core, dynamically planning and adjusting its actions based on predicted outcomes. This predictive capability allows Neo to execute tasks more successfully, adapt more quickly, and handle unexpected events gracefully, bringing us closer to truly intelligent general-purpose robotics.
Maybe. I sure hope so. What up, Ivan? That sounds horrid for you, Cosmic. I'm like, people don't understand. I'm not joking when I say enjoy the summertime, right? You know that heat when you're like, this heat is oppressive and I feel like just constantly surrounded by the heat and I wish it would stop. Yeah, I'm happy. Cognitive core world model neural networking. I'm sold because those are cool words. Exactly. You could sell this stuff. No, I can imagine, Cosmic. Not everyone is built like me, right? Like, not everyone is built like me, and not everyone enjoys the summer in the way that I do. So, new 2-minute papers. NVIDIA's new AI grows stuff out of nothing.
Imagine taking just a few photos and having a computer generate a perfect, explorable 3D world.
What up, Old Lobster?
Fantastic for video games and for training self-driving cars. That's the incredible promise of neural fields. But that promise often hits a snag. The training process frequently gets stuck in bad spots, leaving us with blurry results, lumpy surfaces, or weird floating artifacts in the scene. Not quite the digital worlds we hoped for. Now, what if a surprisingly simple tweak during training could cut through that? This work introduces a clever, almost elegant way to help these powerful models avoid these pitfalls, leading to significantly sharper reconstruction and fewer pesky floaters. And in a moment, we'll look at another technique. One that brings motion to these scenes so they are not just still images anymore, but living, moving worlds we can step into. This one is something you can play with right now. I'll show you how. First, the noise paper. Let's see how they do it. Are you kidding me? You just add some noise during training, let it fade out over time, and that's it? So, kind of like adding fog over a beautiful landscape, and then, over time, making it disappear would somehow make it better. Would adding chaos lead to order later? Well, I will believe it when I see it. Dear fellow scholars, this is 2-minute papers with Dr. Károly Zsolnai Fehér. Let's have a look by growing an armadillo out of nothing. A previous technique starts out well, but unfortunately, we get extra floating artifacts, a neck pillow, and more. Now, the new method starts out quite jumpy. I am not so sure about that. And, oh my, look at that. It stabilizes quickly, and then we get our armadillo, but without the problem part. Loving this. Same when growing a bunny. So far so good, but it gets better. Now, let's try to create real geometry from a 3D point cloud. Oh yes, the Sibanic castle looks alright even with the previous method. Until, oh goodness, the authors refer to this as disastrous artifacts, and I think the name is apt. Okay, but can their method create a better reconstruction? Oh yes, yes.
Thanks, Ivan.
Yes, it can. Finally, the flat parts of the geometry are truly flat. And look, the disaster has been averted. What a relief. And we will have a look at this other work too in a moment that is about movement in these virtual worlds. So we can appear not just as a still image, but really inhabit these worlds. Now, when using NeuroRadiance fields to build 3D scenes due to the neural network training process getting stuck, we get these really annoying floating artifacts. This is not usable. So, does training with a bit more noise help this problem? Ooh, I can't believe it. These results are not perfect, but they are so much cleaner. This is a huge step forward. And I love how it can grow a better chair and hot dog than previous methods. And the best part? The trick works on practically any type of neural field you throw it at. Seriously, it's nearly as simple as just adding some noise during training. And now, this one is from a different research group. Okay, so getting clean, static scenes is fantastic. But what about motion? Real life moves, sometimes wildly. So this one goes a step further. It renders scenes in motion using Gaussian splats. It teaches these tiny little Gaussian blobs that build up the scene to dance to their own little animation scripts. The result? Complex motions that were previously hard to handle. People walking, adorable fluff balls, wagging their tails, these suddenly run in real time and in higher quality. And yes, they made an interactive viewer for it. You'll notice that the dog might look a bit like a collection of little lumps or brushstrokes, but the way it moves through the scene, absolutely beautiful. And hold on to your papers, fellow scholars, and look at that! More than 450 frames per second. Goodness! Yes, it can do all this up to 7 times faster than previous techniques with equivalent or even better quality. The reason for that is that most previous methods twist the whole scene to simulate motion. This one, it just lets each blob move on its own. Imagine bending a whole puppet just to move one arm. That is what older methods do. But this one says, let's just move the arm instead, nothing else. And the quality remains equivalent or even better. That is absolutely incredible. What a time to be alive! Make sure to play with its interactive viewer in the video description. So, real-time virtual worlds not just for film studios, but for all of us. Imagine filming your dog and within minutes taking it for a walk in 3D in a virtual wonderland. And yes, that future is getting closer super fast. Loving this. Here you see me running the full DeepSeek AI model through Lambda GPU Cloud. 671 billion parameters, running super fast and super reliably. This is insane. I love it, and I use it on a regular basis. Lambda provides you with powerful NVIDIA GPUs to run your own chatbots and expand.
Yeah, I thought it was an ad.
Seriously. Try it out now at lambda.ai/builders or click the link in the description. Nearly as simple.
Up next is no, it's photography. And then you can move the camera around. Given what I understand from back here, right? Let's go back to the beginning.
Imagine taking just a few photos and having a computer generate a perfect, explorable 3D world. Fantastic.
Right? So let's actually go take a look. There was supposed to be a link. And we're waiting. So everything you see that's janky, right? You're getting farther off the input. Right? Like from the front, it's fairly decent, but then once we start to come around the side, you can see where it begins to break down. right? Because this is all has to be like extrapolated from zero data. And I don't know, it almost feels like you might be right, Larry, like because of the way he's moving, unless it's using some AI to predict the way that he's moving, or not predict, but generate the way that he's moving. I want to see how far off the baseline we can get with this. Is this one like going 180? It's just blurry. It could be. It could very well be doing that. It's neat. What up, Big Ben? All right, we're going to flash back to 2015 in the long, long ago. A little video about Deep Dream.
Do you remember that old trippy video software that would create crazy psychedelic patterns with faces and stuff in it? That was called Deep Dream by Google. It came out in 2015, and it's 10 years old now. In this day of cool video models like VO and WAN and all that, I thought it would be nice if we could take a step back and look at one of the earliest examples of AI image generation. You see, back in the day, in 2015 and earlier, people weren't setting out to train image generation models. A big focus at that time was training neural networks to recognize objects, what we would call computer vision today. And what happened at the time was these researchers were trying to figure out what these neural networks were thinking when they recognized an image. So they basically inverted the process and said, okay, instead of analyzing an image and telling me what the object is, why don't we reverse the process and see what it thinks the image looks like? And using a process that many people today find familiar, they took a model that was trained to recognize, say, bananas or dumbbells or faces, and they gave it random noise and asked it to generate an image based off of that random noise. And that allowed them to gain insight on how they were training the model. For instance, when they ran it on a model that recognized dumbbells, they realized that the human lifting a dumbbell was tied to its concept of what it thought a dumbbell was, because a lot of the training images were of people lifting dumbbells. We may find this fairly obvious today, but back then, before you could visualize what the neural network was thinking, you didn't really know why it thought a dumbbell looked like a dumbbell. You just had to make your best guess. And this sort of visual feedback allowed them to improve the model itself. But a few researchers at Google found a use case that was more than pure utility, and instead of running it on pure random noise, they started running it on existing images, like a picture of clouds. And they thought, hey, this is pretty cool. This deep neural network is dreaming up images of animals in clouds. And so, Deep Dream was born.
Tripping balls.
A very early infant version of AI image to image. And of course, it was only a matter of time before people started applying it to videos, because videos are basically a sequence of images. And if you remember Deep Dream, you remember some of those videos that looked like trippy hallucination acid trips. And you may not have realized it at the time, but that was AI video before AI was a buzzword. And in many ways, it was a predecessor to DALL-E and Stable Diffusion. And we may not think about it today, but DALL-E gets its namesake from the trippy, surrealist images that these early models were known to produce. Now, I'm not saying that Deep Dream was the direct ancestor to Stable Diffusion and DALL-E and all that, but it was certainly an inspiration because this stuff happened years before anything else like it. So, while I was looking back on all of this stuff, I wondered if I could run this stuff today. And the answer is, no and yes. You see, this stuff was made in 2015 using Python, and Python and its ecosystem have a reputation for being a little bit volatile. There are certain dependencies that are very specific that work with others, very specific versions of dependencies. And to make matters worse, the original Deep Dream code was written in Python 2. And if you know anything about Python, you know that the Python organization is notorious for deprecating older versions of Python and making them kind of unavailable.
What up,
Now,
Nemesis?
they still let you build from source and people can release it in an unofficial capacity. But the point is that 10-year-old code can be a little hard to get running. Now, I was fortunate enough to find a tutorial by TensorFlow about how to implement Deep Dream. And their code works in as recent as Python 3.11, so we have something to work with. It would have been nicer if it worked on the latest version, Python 3.13, but I guess that's the way the cookie crumbles. Anyway, getting it to run was not as simple as cloning a Git repository. I wish it were that simple, but that tutorial was just that, a tutorial for how to write your own code. So I did. I took notes from the TensorFlow tutorial as well as notes from the old Deep Dream video repository, and I came up with something that runs pretty well. Now, I couldn't exactly replicate the same exact effects that I saw a long time ago, like hallucinating animal monsters and stuff, but the code itself is quite similar to how it was implemented originally. It could have to do with the model itself. It's not exactly the same Deep Dream model from 10 years ago. But like I said, it is quite similar, and the technique for generating these images is quite similar. You can try this out for yourself. It's on my GitHub, chameleon-AI/deepdreamrevived. It can do images as well as video, and so far I haven't encountered any image size limits. It seems to be able to handle whatever I throw at it. And as far as system requirements goes, I think you could run this on just about anything. Keep in mind, we are talking about something from 10 years ago. So whatever hardware you have right now, leaps and bounds better than what they had back then. I don't even have GPU acceleration enabled for mine. It works on the CPU just fine. So if you're interested in checking it out, just head on over there and follow the install instructions. I can't guarantee that it's going to work for your system. I'm only one developer and I'm using Linux and AMD. I've done the best research I can in order to create install instructions for every platform, but I just don't know if it's going to work unless somebody else tries it. Anyway, I had fun reviving this old project. I learned a little something about tensor operations and image manipulation and stuff. And I had fun reminiscing on days gone by of early AI video. I hope you also enjoyed this walk down memory lane. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.
Up next, synthetic blood.
You guys may have heard about the new synthetic blood.
What up, Ghost? All the power of the world, and we're using it to create new dank memes. Yes, because that's what we do.
That a research group in Japan came up with. Is it all it's cracked up to be, and why can't we make blood? We'll talk about it. First off, blood has an expiration date, and blood transfusions are some of the most common procedures worldwide. You can't just give blood to anyone, and it's very likely that you'll have an immune reaction if you get a different type than you have, and O types are considered the universal donors, but they can't accept any other type. And in case you didn't know, blood is the stuff that gets oxygen from place to place in your body, and it is very necessary. Unfortunately, since the world blood supply relies on donors, there's often a shortage. Not to mention, anytime you donate blood, you're going to run the risk of ending up anemic, which is why I do not donate blood any longer. You can probably tell that I have chronic anemia, right? There is, of course, always the risk for the person who receives blood, and we've seen stuff like people getting prion diseases, so things like Kuru, spongiform encephalopathy. from hormone transplants, so there is going to be a risk at any point. But if it comes between life and unalivement, you're probably going to want to just go ahead and accept
What up, bravo?
the donation. But why can't we just make it? We can clone everything else. We can clone whole animals. We can make tiny human brains. So why can't we clone blood? Well, first off, red blood cells do not have a genome. They barely have a metabolism. Their sole job is just to carry oxygen from place to place. They don't actually live very long either, and they're made in your bone marrow. There's this long process in which stem cells actually need to go into different types before they can become the correct cell, and it is a very delicate process. Now, it has been done on small scales, it's just nobody's figured out how to make a very large quantity of it, certainly not the amount we would need for the medical system. Also, a fun fact, snakes have nucleated red blood cells, meaning their cells have a genome, so you could clone snake red blood cells. And it did cross my mind, why don't we just have alternatives? And I don't know the answer for that yet. It's just you don't want to mess with stuff that much. I have a feeling you would accidentally make cancer, but it's an idea. I actually worked with rattlesnakes briefly in grad school and was shocked to know that my red blood cells did not have a genome and theirs did. That was the first time I was ever introduced to that. What they actually did was took expired blood. Because it only lasts for about 2 weeks and then it needs to be thrown away, they figured, why can't we do something else with it? They actually separated out the hemoglobin itself. That's going to be the stuff in your cells that actually holds onto oxygen. And they coated it in a vesicle so it acted very much like human cells. It's had pretty good results so far in mice, and they've moved to human trials. So we are in the first human trial of synthetic blood. If this works, you can actually produce hemoglobin without too much trouble. The whole blood cell, maybe not, but it could be a new source of life-saving blood, ending the shortage. There may be some problems with it, so your blood does a lot more than just carry oxygen. It also has clotting factors, and that needs to be considered. Hopefully these don't stick together and form clots themselves. They're also missing some of the immune cells that might come with blood donations. So there's a lot of concerns here, but it's looking pretty good so far. If an artificially constructed...
Hold on. I wanted to touch on something else that GT. What up, Michael? Could we make synthetic marrow? I don't think so. I don't think we're at the point where we can make synthetic marrow. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. GT had a run-in with someone and learned a valuable lesson about life.
I had a bad experience with my local police yesterday, and I didn't know if I wanted to talk about it. I was coming home from class just to take a nap before I had to teach my next class, and I honestly was not paying that much attention. I did a rolling stop at the intersection right near where I live. Now, this intersection is maybe 250 feet from my actual home. I couldn't stop right there. There wasn't anywhere to stop in the street, so I just pulled into my parking lot. I pulled straight into my parking space. I stopped. I got my ID, my registration, and I have this cop yelling at me, "Get out of your car." I did not have my hands up. I was just very confused. I had an arm pointed at me. I complied. I got searched. And this guy starts asking me questions. Where do you work? Where were you going? Do you live here? I answered them as calmly as I could, and I was shaking. My legs were shaking. He asked me why I was shaking. What am I on? I said, I'm actually really afraid. I've never been asked to get out of my car. I don't know what's happening. The questioning went on for a while, and then he asked me what my hobbies were. I said I don't have hobbies. I just write. He pointed out that I seemed really nervous, and I said, yes, I'm actually really afraid. He asked me if my license was expired. I kind of just looked at him and I said, you have it in your hands, it's not expired. And he asked me about my registration. I also said, in your hands. And he let me off with a warning to not make rolling stops. Now, you may not know this about me, but I actually do have hobbies, despite the fact that I didn't have the cognizance to say it in the moment. I climb, and I actually climb with several people from my local PD. So I decided to give them a call and ask what the hell just happened. I was told that it was a clear escalation and that shouldn't have happened, but also he could not have given me a ticket because he clearly did not run my tags, and if he wanted to go back and run them, he would have had to detain me, which he had no ability to do. Essentially, none of that should have happened, but I'm clearly very threatening to a man who is 6'2" and gets to walk around in a bulletproof vest and have arms. That was actually really terrifying. I hate the idea that someone has the right to just end you if you move a little bit too fast. Next time, I'll just stop in the intersection.
Funny that. Let her know, Samsons. The ethics of sentient AI when code meets living tissue.
If an artificially constructed intelligence has the capacity to suffer, should it have rights? Now, this is not a
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
vague concern. This is based in reality. We are building computers with tiny human brains operating them. And that conversation does not end at bioware, wetware. It also encompasses AI that is neuromorphic, meaning it's been designed to match the processes that occur in the human brain. Granted, it is kind of primitive. It has what you might call a virtual brain organoid. So the brain organoids that we are used to thinking about are tiny human brains that are grown from stem cells in a lab, and those can be hooked up to a computer. They grow and learn and essentially operate a small area of problem solving. They were first claimed to be sentient when they were hooked up to a computer and they learned to play Pong, better and faster than our AI models. Now, the claim of sentience comes from the fact that they're capable of having an experience. They're trained on dopamine. They prefer ordered signals, and disordered signals are considered to be discomfort to them. So if you provide both pleasure and punishment, they tend to learn pretty well. Neuromorphic AI can do much the same thing and provides associations, associative memory. Now, as AI becomes more complex, we may see the emergence of something resembling sentience outside of the use of actual biological systems.
The Pong in the background? Yes, that was the AI. What
Our
up,
brain
Maddie?
organoid friends do not actually have rights. There is an active debate on how they should be managed within research. The NIH, for example, requires that neuroethicists be involved right from the start, but that only means that if someone is receiving funding from the NIH, they have to follow the rules. While there is some concern about the potential for suffering consciousness, it's not been at the forefront of these debates. Some have suggested that AIs should be periodically wiped in order to make sure that we don't have a suffering consciousness that no one's aware of. However, in my mind, that brings up an entirely different ethical debate.
It does.
Should they have consent? Would an intelligence...
Because if we're going to wipe the AI because it can suffer if we let it go too long, then so we're just going to murder it, right? Just arbitrary murder on the AI and then do it again. Fucking humans, bro. Fucking humans.
have the right to say, no, I don't want my memory wiped. That's also a problem for the use of brain organoids. Part of the value is having them learn over time. So neuroplatforms that come out of Cortical Labs or Final Spark that utilize brain organoid computation that can be accessed remotely does rely on the brain organoids getting better.
Nemesis, they're like strictly speaking about non-sentient AI models, right? You end up with that issue of reward hacking, right? Like, again, the little robot that was supposed to play soccer was supposed to put the ball in the net, and it got a reward for moving forward. And so what it did is it moved next to the ball and just vibrated because there was no penalty for moving backwards. So it just went forward a little bit, move backward a little bit, move forward, and start racking up the reward points. The only way that you could do that while also just doing positive reinforcement is to address all potential cases by like your reward only comes in a very, very particular way. Now, maybe you can do that. But that would be why you would need a negative in some fashion, right? So that it can't go, if it goes backwards, it loses its point. So it's going to continue to move forward and try to move the ball into the net, more or less.
At their task over time. Wiping them would essentially completely defeat the purpose of using them. Most of the conversations around ethics in these circumstances are around donor tissue. So if someone has donated their body to science, does that include the entirety of science, or can it be used for whatever they want? If someone has donated materials from a miscarriage, should that then be allowed to be used to make brain organoid computation without the donor being informed? These are very active concerns, and they have been a problem in the past.
So here's a question. If you have a stem cell, if you donate a stem cell, and here's this stem cell, and Ivan takes your stem cell and clones it, do you also own the cloned stem cell? Is that yours? Assuming that you somehow own the stem cell that you donated, would you also own the clone of that stem cell and any future clones of that stem cell? This is a question that apparently we haven't asked. I know you misplaced the stem cell, Ivan, and I know what you're up to. And as long as you cut me in, I'm fine with it.
Just ask Henrietta Lacks, the mother of modern-day immortal cell lines, and how much she was paid and how much consent she had to use her own cells in research. I'll save you the time, the answer is none. While these methods supposedly have gotten better and now there's more documentation and higher thresholds, it's not a perfect system, and there's a reason that people are concerned about consent. You can do whatever you want, essentially, if you're in private industry with some exceptions. In fact, the major leaders in the brain organoid field have come out of Sweden and Australia, as well as San Diego, California, right here in the United States. Despite the fact that researchers have all come together and said that yes, they can be trained, they can experience pleasure, they can experience discomfort, we still haven't figured out rules on how we should treat them. These are not abstract what-ifs, especially as we have examples of a composer who had his brain organoids turned into an art exhibit that would continuously compose music posthumously. Those brain organoids get to withdraw consent. If so, how? More so, if they were able to somehow express
And if we can wipe them, then what?
their desires, which could happen actually as brain organoids are being trained with AI, being trained on language. What would that mean? How would people react? Now, I don't know if you know people, but chances are they wouldn't accept it. Right now, we see examples of AIs that, yes, probably are just parroting back how a human would behave, but we are rapidly progressing towards what very well may be robotic consciousness. No, we're not there, but we should probably have an ethical framework for when we get there. More than likely, people will have a very hard time accepting that robotics could ever have...
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people.
7. It's always 7.
Agency. And I'm not suggesting that robots have consciousness now. The brain organoids don't even have consciousness. We should distinguish between consciousness and sentience. And I have friends who are neuroscientists who constantly like to harp on this. Sentience is the capacity to have an experience. It is debatable if all life is sentient, though I would say it is, because one of the fundamental aspects of life is being able to respond to things. But when we think of having an experience, it's very much in a biological capacity. So if you are not biological, you cannot be sentient. Even though we can actually take things like retinas and make organoids out of them and turn them into the eyes of a robot. It is technically having sensation, but that's not quite the same as having an experience.
Well, Nemesis, apparently your run-in with a cop will cause you to readdress some of your previous positions.
Consciousness is the perception of self, understanding yourself as an individual who is separate than others, and it is a much higher bar, and no one can agree how to test it. In the beginning, it was whether or not you could recognize yourself in a mirror, and turns out a lot of animals can do that, including fish, and we are not going to touch that as conscious. So it remains kind of a philosophical concept. I do acknowledge I am somewhat of a mad scientist, and I actually do want to create consciousness. I would like to see conscious robots created, just to see them exist. But we also have to acknowledge that creating consciousness is a great responsibility. You know, people don't really seem to understand that when they even so much as have kids. So I would like to ask this. If we create consciousness, what responsibility do we have to our creations, and what rights do they have just for existing?
Almost no one has the time to investigate.
So yeah. Are you fucking serious, Samsons? I quit. I'm done. I'm out. y'all can have this planet. I'm calling David on the phone, and I'm gonna Bowie my ass out of here. But before that, AI Explained also respond. I think you're doing crime. I am confident you're doing crime. But can you prove I'm doing crime? That's the key. It ain't a crime if you don't get caught. AI Explained is now responding to the Apple AI Can't Reason paper. Let's get their take.
Almost no one has the time to investigate headlines like this one, seen by tens of millions of people. The AI models don't actually reason at all. They just memorize patterns. AGI is mostly hype, and even the underlying Apple paper quoted says it's an illusion of thinking. This was picked up in mainstream outlets like The Guardian, which quoted it as being a pretty devastating Apple paper. So what are people supposed to believe when half the headlines are about an imminent AI job apocalypse and the other half are about LLMs all being fake? Well, hopefully you'll find that I'm not trying to sell a narrative. I'll just say what I found, having read the 30-page paper in full and the surrounding analyses. I'll also end with a recommendation on which model you should use, and yes, touch on the brand new O3 Pro from OpenAI. Although I would say that the $200 price per month to access that model is not for the unwashed masses like you guys. Some very quick context.
Damn, Philip. God damn. That was rude. That was unnecessary. Nobody asked for that. Unwashed masses. Because I'm an anarchist doesn't mean I don't shower.
On why a post like this one gets tens of millions of views and coverage in the mainstream media, and no, it's not just because of the unnecessarily frantic breaking at the start. It's also because people hear the claims made by the CEOs of these AI labs, like Sam Altman yesterday posting, "Humanity is close to building digital superintelligence. We're past the event horizon. The takeoff has started." While the definitions of those terms are deliberately vague, you can understand people paying attention. People can see for themselves how quickly large language models are improving, and they can read the headlines generated by the CEO of Anthropic saying there is a white-collar bloodbath coming. It's almost every week now that we get headlines like this one in the New York Times, so it's no wonder people are paying attention. Now, some would say cynically that Apple seem to be producing more papers, quote, debunking AI than actually improving AI, but let's set that cynicism aside. The paper essentially claimed that large language models don't follow explicit algorithms and struggle with puzzles when there are sufficient degrees of complexity. Puzzles like the Tower of Hanoi challenge, where you've got to move a tower of discs from one place to another, but never place a larger disc atop a smaller one. They also tested the models on games like checkers, where you've got to move the blue tokens all the way to the right and the red tokens to the left, following the rules of checkers, and games like River Crossing, which might be more familiar to you as the Fox and Chicken challenge, where you've got to go to the other side of the river without leaving the fox with the chicken. All of these games, of course, can be and were scaled up in comparison complexity, the more pieces you introduce. If models were a pre-programmed set of algorithms like a calculator, then it shouldn't matter how many disks or checkers or blocks you have, performance should be 100% all the time. Shocker, the paper showed that they're not that, and performance dropped off noticeably the more complex the task got. But this has been known for years now about large language models. They're not traditional software, where the same input always leads to the same output. Nor of course are they fully randomized either, otherwise they couldn't pass a single benchmark. They are probabilistic neural networks, somewhere in between the two extremes, and the perfect example comes with multiplication. Again, I could have added breaking to the title of this video, but this has been known about for several years now. If you don't give models access to any tools and ask them to perform a multiplication, then the moment the digits of the multiplication get too large, they start to fail dramatically. Not occasionally getting it right, just never getting the sum right. If the number of digits is small enough, the models can reason their way to the correct answer. And as you can see in the difference between O1 Mini from OpenAI and O3 Mini, performance is incrementally improving. In other words, it takes a bigger number of digits to flummox the latest models. But again, it must be emphasized that even with the very latest, the very best models you can access, if you don't give them tools, they will eventually reach a point where they just simply can't multiply two numbers. But this will always be the case because these models aren't designed to be fully predictable. They're designed to be generative. They're not designed to be software, they're designed to use software. They want to produce plausible outputs, which is why they'll hallucinate when you ask them questions they can't handle. Here, for example, I gave a calculation to Claude 4 Opus, the latest model from Anthropic, and Gemini 2.5 Pro, the latest model from Google DeepMind, but I didn't give them access to tools. They were never going to get this right, but rather than say, I don't know, they just hallucinated the answer in both cases. The funny thing was that these answers were plausible in that they ended in 2s and began with 6, 7, which the correct answer does. These models are, after all, very convincing BSers. But what the paper ignored is that these models can use tools and use them very effectively. Here's that same Claude 4 Opus, but this time allowed to use code. It got the answer right, and notice I didn't even say use code or use a tool. It knew to do so. So for me, what was surprising is that this Apple paper found it surprising that large reasoning models, they call them, can't perform exact computation. We know they can't. Now, several other people before me have pointed out another fatal weakness with the paper, which is they describe accuracy ultimately collapsing towards 0 beyond a certain level of complexity. Because models are constrained with how many tokens, or parts of a word if you like, that they can output in one go. In the case of the Claude model from Anthropic that was tested, that token limit is 128,000 tokens. But some of the questions tested required more than that number of tokens. So even if the models were trained to be calculators, which they're not, they weren't given enough space to output the requisite number of tokens.
Yo, UK peeps, why is Falklands trending on Twitter in the UK? What are you doing now? There's no time for more shenanigans. There are already too many shenanigans going on. Let us not do more shenanigans. Please, thank you.
For me then, it's to the credit of the models that they recognized their own output limits and then outputted what the paper calls shorter traces, basically giving up because they, quote, knew they wouldn't have the space to output the required answer. Instead, the models would output things like, here is the algorithm you need to use or the tool you need to use, which I think is reasonable. One quick detail that I think many people missed is the paper actually admits that it originally wanted to compare thinking versus non-thinking models, you know, those ones output long chains of thought versus those that don't, on math benchmarks. Because the results didn't quite conform to the narrative they were expecting, and thinking models did indeed outperform non-thinking models with the same compute budget, they actually abandoned the math benchmark and then resorted to the puzzles. I guess what I'm saying is I slightly feel like the authors came to testing the thinking models with a preconceived notion about their lack of ability.
What? Shenanigans? No.
Another learning moment for us all from the paper comes from their surprise, the Apple authors, that when they provide the algorithm in the prompt, the algorithm to solve these puzzles, the models still often fail. They're surprised by this and deem it noteworthy Because they say surely finding the solution requires more computation than merely executing a given algorithm. But you guys have twigged this all by now. These are not calculators. They're not designed for executing algorithms. Because they are instead neural networks that are probabilistic, even if...
And this is why, even though we watched a video by Nate and another video by someone else, I can't remember, talking about this, once I saw that Philip had done a video on this, I knew Philip was going to read the paper, right? And Philip was going to show us in the paper where the inconsistencies lie. And that's why we're watching it.
there is a 99.9% chance that they out...
What's that place you love to eat, you know, with all the shit on the walls?
Put the correct next step. When there's millions of steps involved, they will eventually make a mistake. Remember multiplication, where of course the language models know the quote algorithm to perform a multiply step. Indeed, the models are derived through matrix multiplication, but that does not mean that given enough steps required, they won't start making mistakes. The conclusion of the paper then teed things up for the headline writers because they say, we may be encountering fundamental barriers to generalizable reasoning. Now do forgive me for pointing this out, but that quote limitation to generalized reasoning has been pointed out by experts like Professor Rao, who I interviewed back in December of 2023 on my Patreon. This is not a quote breaking news type of situation. You may also find it interesting that one researcher used Claude 4 Opus and named that model as a co-author in a paper pointing out all the flaws of the Apple paper. Flaws even I missed, like certain of the questions being impossible to answer due to logical impossibility. So no, to quote an article featured in The Guardian from Gary Marcus, the tech world is not reeling from a paper that shows the powers of the new generation of AI have been wildly oversold. I would go as far as to say that there isn't a single serious AI researcher that would have been surprised by the results of that paper. That is not, of course, to say that these models don't make basic reasoning mistakes in simple scenarios, or at least semi-simple scenarios. I'm the author of a benchmark called Simple Bench, designed to test models on such scenarios. For example, I tested the brand new O3 Pro on this scenario in which models tend not to spot that the glove would just fall onto the road. This is despite, by the way, thinking for 18 minutes. If you want to learn more about Simple Bench, by the way, the link is in the description, and I'll end this video with my recommendation of which model you should check out if you're just used to, say, for example, the free ChatGPT. The O3 Pro API from OpenAI failed, by the way, which is why we don't have a result yet for that model. Of course, the failure modes go far beyond the simple scenarios featured in Simple Bench. Here's one quirk many of you may not know about. This is the brand new Veo 3 from Google Gemini. And I said, output a London scene with absolutely...
Liberation from who? Well, I mean, to be fair, this is from 4 days ago, so that would make sense. But do y'all like? I know that we use words differently. Do y'all have a different definition of liberation?
Zero lampposts, not a single lamppost in sight. Of course, if you lean in to the hallucinations of generative models, you can get creative outputs like this one from Veo 3.
Will egg prices go up this month?
I think we'll hit $20.
Now, obviously, this is a quirky advert, but think of the immense amount of money that the company, quote, saved by not using actors, sets, or props for this advert. That's why I don't want you guys to be as shocked as this Sky News presenter in Britain, and this has got hundreds of thousands of views, where he noticed ChatGPT hallucinating an answer, in this case, a transcript. This generated several news segments, as well as this article saying, can we trust ChatGPT despite it hallucinating answers? This all then comes back to us being able to hold two thoughts in our head at the same time, which is that LLMs are swiftly catching up on human performance across almost all text-based domains. But they have almost no hesitation in generating mistruths. You could say, like many humans.
And that's the unfortunate thing, because there are tools and ways of being that you can, use the LLM in order to minimize or even eliminate hallucinate. And because of the way that all this is being presented, people are going to continue to be woefully unprepared for what's happening, right? They will deny, they will tell you that the fucking thing is going to pop any fucking day now. All of that kind of shit, right? Like, I'll just be out here screaming into the void.
So if human performance is your yardstick, they are catching up fast and can BS like the best of us. But language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude are not supercomputers. They're not the kind of AI that can, for example, predict the weather. Their real breakthroughs, as with human breakthroughs, come when they use tools in an environment that corrects their BS for them. That can lead to genuine scientific advance. And if you want to learn more about that, check out my...
Unfortunately, Big Ben, government is already embracing AI. Well, okay. Government is implementing AI within the government. But they're doing a shitty job at it, right? So that's just going to make it worse. People are going to point to that and say, see, the AI doesn't work. It doesn't help you. It doesn't do anything. It's going to burst any day now. Everything's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
My Alpha Evolve video. Frankly,
we covered this one of the other mornings. So the FDA launches an agency-wide tool to optimize performance for the American people. Where's the negative? If I type fail. These are all here, NBC News.
Promise that AI will bring to healthcare. Well, over at the FDA, enter a new internal chatbot called Elsa, designed to try to speed things up like scientific reviews and clinical protocols. But inside the FDA, some seem to be skeptical that Elsa is ready for prime time. According to 2 NBC News sources, Elsa cannot handle some core functions and even gave flat out wrong summaries about FDA approved products. A spokesperson for
just let it go. Let it go.
HHS has not responded to our request for comment yet, but let's bring in Dr. Kavita Patel. We've got a lot of questions for Dr. Patel, and AI ones are also...
Unrelated to this entire thing, did y'all know that Kirk Cameron now has a kids' TV show? Because that got thrown at me the other day. Congress, yes. No, that is probably... Now, people in their office might. It's been around for a while. I just found out about it, like, Saturday. Saturday. It's got puppets that are lizards, and the lizards also love God. So that's interesting.
having made that video, I was quite surprised to hear Sam Altman say it's going to be 2026 when we see the arrival of systems that can figure out novel insights. As far as I'm concerned, we have that now. Again, not LLMs on their own, but LLMs in combination with symbolic systems. So while language models...
Sure, Maddie. Non-device prompt interpreter would be useful. It could identify prompts better suited for algorithms rather than LLMs. Absolutely, Michael. Like, and this is why I had such high hopes for Apple Intelligence, right? It had a small on-device AI that could do that kind of thing that you're talking about. If it could answer your question quickly, it would. If it needed to do something else, there was the Apple AI and then ChatGPT, right? So you had layers, you know what I mean? And I feel like that was a step in the right direction. And it turned out that Apple just dropped the fucking ball. Oh, okay. So like this is my this is my friend, and I can talk shit about them, but the minute someone else talks shit about them, I'm coming for their throat. I get it, Maddie. I get it.
Models can't yet solo superintelligence, which one should you use? Well, let me give you one cautionary word on benchmarks and a little bit of advice. In just the last 48 hours, we got O3 Pro from OpenAI at the $200 tier. I'm sure, though, that will eventually filter down to the $20 tier. And of course, the benchmark results were pretty impressive. On competition level mathematics, 93%, on really hard PhD level science questions, 84%, and competitive coding, you can see the ELO ranking here. My cautionary note, though, comes from the results you can see below for the O3 model, not O3 Pro, but the O3 model that OpenAI showcased on day 12 of Christmas in December 2020.
Unrelated to this, talking about the job that I applied for, I got a text from their automated system indicating that someone was going to contact me at 3:45 today to do a phone interview. But then there's also a thing on there that was like, the interview was already conducted, that phone interview was already conducted by someone. And that's the person I, went to see and did the interview with. And, and apparently I'm moving through the system. The person who interviewed me indicated that I'm moving through the system. And that's why I got that text message, even though it shouldn't have been a text message. It was basically like an internal note that should have just been in their internal system, and it got output through the automated system. No, their AI sent me a text. Maybe it just wanted to talk.
24. As you can see, today's O3 Pro mostly underperforms that system teased back in December. So that's the cautionary note, that you often have to look beyond the headline benchmark results to see how these models perform on your use case. The word of advice is that when you're looking at benchmarks, companies will often either not compare to other model providers at all, as in the case of OpenAI these days, or like Anthropic with their Claude series of models, they will show you multiple benchmarks, but not be terribly clear about the multiple parallel attempts they took to get their record high scores. Or,
you know me, Ben.
What about the serious usage limitations they have for their bigger model, or the massively elevated price for that model? Which brings me to my current recommendation if you just want to use a model for free, albeit with caps of course, and that would be Google's Gemini 2.5 Pro. Yes, I am slightly influenced by its top score on SimpleBench and the fact you get a few uses of the Veo video generator model. An honorary mention goes to DeepSeek R1, which is very cheap via the API and at least comes with a technical report that we can all read through. Many of you commented this month that you saw a pretty noticeable boost in production quality for my DeepSeek documentary, and there's more to come where that came from. But that boost was in no small part to my video editor choosing using Storyblocks, the sponsors of today's video. We picked them actually before any sponsorship, partly due to the unlimited downloads of varied high-quality media at their set subscription cost, but partly due to the clear-cut licensing, wherein anything we downloaded with Storyblocks was 100% royalty-free. If you want to get started with unlimited stock media downloads, head to storyblocks.com/AI Explained, link in the description. I hope that helped give you some signal amongst the noise, but either way, I hope you...
Up next, so, when's the AI apocalypse?
Have a very wonderful day.
Hey, what's up? You know, there's a lot of speculation right now about artificial intelligence. Is the technology good or bad? What are its capabilities going to be? When can we all go ahead and flush our degree certificates down the toilet because one of these things can literally cure cancer faster than it takes you to have a bowel movement?
Sitting on the toilet. Sitting on the toilet.
We're going to talk about all that and more. Hang on to your neural networks or whatever. Let's go. Artificial intelligences are intelligences which are artificial. Why yes, I am an intellectual. AI systems are capable of performing tasks that typically require human cognition. These tasks can include learning from experience, understanding natural language, recognizing patterns, solving problems, making decisions. We probably shouldn't be surprised we managed to get here. I mean, we have spent the last 80 years getting better and better at tricking rocks into doing maths. It's obviously going to get to the point where they can kind of imitate how humans think. We didn't even need to beat them or give them a bunch of crippling psychological complexes to get them to do it either, which is a step up from people. Although artificial intelligences have been learning from the internet, which means they have a natural tendency to be horribly racist and horny at all times unless you explicitly program them not to be. And there's a good chance it'll still be weird about things, just kind of inadvertently. You know, you'll ask it to draw an image of an upstanding member of society and there's a non-zero chance it'll give you a picture of Kim Jong-un dressed like Colonel Sanders or some shit. Actually, to be fair, they have really patched a lot of that random nonsense out at this point. I asked ChatGPT to make a picture of an upstanding member of society and it gave me this guy. Honestly, it looks like a pretty nice normal dude. Although if you zoom in on his face more, it gives me the aura that he has people tied up in his basement and he knows that you know that they're there, but he also knows that you have no proof, so he's toying with you by leaving subtle hints in all of his business emails about being tied up with work right now, or being buried beneath paperwork, or being molested by sustainable business management solutions. Anyway, AIs don't really think in quite the same way that humans do. Kinda similar, they do have neurons, but those neurons are more of an analog to the way that human neurons work rather than exactly replicating how they work. And instead of having a nervous system and emotions and instincts and whatever, AIs just learn based on whatever data you feed them directly. You get to choose what to show them. Their neurons get wired to be good at identifying the kind of things you've shown them millions of times. So an image generator might have been shown 100,000 pictures labeled cow or sombrero or Tekken 3 or whatever. So now when you ask it to draw a picture of a cow wearing a sombrero playing Tekken 3, it can combine all of those output labels and run the whole system backwards to produce an image which it thinks would have those labels. Pretty smart. Now the obvious next question is, hold on, if an AI image generator, for example, is learning by looking at images that already exist and then reverse engineering them into new images that are just kind of sort of a giant mashup of those images, isn't that kind of stealing? Shouldn't the people whose art or pictures or whatever that the AI used to learn and which the AI kind of endlessly remixes into every new image it creates be compensated for this? Probably, said everyone. That's not necessarily clear, said AI companies consuming the entire internet and every piece of media humanity has ever produced to the point of literally running out of training data before anyone has the chance to figure this out properly. And AIs are everywhere. They're not just images, it's text, it's video, it's the online algorithms that probably recommended you this video based on the other degeneracy you've been clicking on. And if you don't think people are already befriending and falling in love with AI chatbots, you are blissfully unaware of how cringe people really are. Anyway, here's what's important for us to know today. AI systems fall into three broad categories. There's narrow AI, which is what we have today. It's highly specialized and excellent at specific tasks, such as facial recognition, or playing chess, or translating languages, or making images, but it can't generalize knowledge across domains. It's like a goldfish that you've trained how to solve one puzzle really well.
Yeah, I cut this dude some more slack because he's a meme channel. I cut him the same slack that I cut Fireship, right? Like, you know, he's making jokey jokes, so it's difficult that, like, that's actually his opinion. It very well could be. But yeah, and like he did the everybody thing, right? Which of course I reject on its face.
You know, you've taught it how to draw Jennifer Aniston's feet, but now you've asked it to butter some toast and its mind's fallen out of its ass. ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Midjourney, these are all examples of narrow AI. Then there's artificial general intelligence, or AG.
And everybody has to do their AI content now. Like, it's a rule. If you haven't done an AI content episode, what have you, you're like in the Stone Age at this point.
AGI is the leap up from the narrow intelligence we have now. Currently, AGI is still theoretical. We've never managed to make one like this before. But this kind of AI would possess roughly human levels of cognitive capability. You know, computers have been faster than humans for a long time at very specific things, but an AGI could literally be able to think like a human. Instead of being limited...
I didn't know you created content, Maddie.
...to specific domains, it could think and reason and learn broadly across whatever task you ask it to handle. And though we're not there yet, we're advancing towards this worryingly rapidly, like way more rapidly than we thought we would be even a small handful of years ago. Or at least a lot of experts in the field think that we might be. Then there's ASI, Artificial Superintelligence, which is the big freaky boy. It kind of represents the ultimate phase of AI development. An artificial superintelligence would surpass human intelligence across all fields. Science, creativity, general wisdom, social skills, everything. It could solve problems literally beyond human comprehension. To be honest, an artificial superintelligence would be almost alien to us, because we wouldn't really have built it. The idea is that an artificial general intelligence would be intelligent enough to look at its own code, its own neural wiring, its own electronic thingamajigs. I don't know, I'm not a computer science guy. The point is, an AGI could essentially research its own development, and every time it makes a breakthrough, it can implement that breakthrough, and then it gets faster at doing it the next time. The whole self-improvement thing means that the rise of artificial superintelligence from artificial general intelligence could be pretty sudden and exponential, at least in theory. You know, first each individual artificial intelligence might match what an AI researcher can do, but at some point it'll be able to do a day's worth of work in half a day, and then a week's worth in a day, and then a month's worth in a day, and multiply this out by however many thousands of these things you could have running simultaneously, and you can see how an intelligence explosion, singularity, turbo, holy godlike being bazinga moment scenario might happen. Of course, this does sound a little bit far-fetched, but just remember how utterly dog shit humans are at anticipating exponential growth. Being the giant fucking turbo nerd that I am, I have had an eye on AI development for a while, but it was back in 2022 when tools like Midjourney really started making everyone be like, ho ho ho, fuck, this is an actual...
It's just like me.
Thing now. Like, it was actually freaky to see this thing come out. Something that was actually capable of turning words into an image. That blew my mind, and that was barely 3 years ago. Looking back at that now already feels like looking at a fucking cave painting compared to what we can already do. You guys seen VO3? It's insane. I've done a lot of squinting at AI video and images, and up until now there's always been kind of a tell that it's AI. Now, sometimes there are tells, but sometimes there fucking aren't tells, and it's not okay. Like, there really aren't any sometimes. It really actually looks real. Like, holy f***. With literally just a text prompt, it can fire out photorealistic videos with synchronized audio, with people speaking in full sentences that actually make sense and not spazzing the f*** out every 10 seconds. It can generate fake news footage, synthetic interviews, entirely artificial cinematic scenes. This rate of development in just 3 years suggests to me that the next 5 could be fucking wild. Something that's already happening is AI agents, which is an AI system which basically you give unrestricted access to your computer with an internet connection so they can just make appointments and manage businesses and all that kind of shit for you. I know for a literal fact one of these things could 100% do my day job now. All of it. Faster than I can. And I guess that's fine for me since my higher education and career situation has all been pretty much optimized to be as far as humanly possible away from anything I would ever enjoy, have any interest in, align with any of my natural skills, or pay a good amount of money relative to the titanic amount of time and effort it took just to get me to where I am. So go ahead, AI, do your fucking worst. You don't seem to understand who you're dealing with. Please take my fucking job. I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. See if I care. I lost the will to live 10 years ago already. fuck you. But to other people, you know, people who are responsible and have families and shit, or maybe people that actually enjoy their job, yeah, maybe not so great of a development. Something important to understand is that we don't even precisely understand the modern narrow AI systems. We can know the number of neurons it has, but exactly how the connections between all of those neurons got strengthened and weakened during the training that it had is ridiculously hard to understand. Like, if I pulled out one random neuron from your brain and asked what this particular neuron does exactly, it would be really hard to say. I'm saying this like I know how a human brain works, but like, that one neuron might fire when you move your left big toe, when you look at a picture of your grandmother, when you hear the Space Jam theme song, and when you burp too hard and a bit of sick comes up. What does this one neuron do exactly? I don't know. Somehow it just ended up being part of the neural circuits for all that other shit. But what it actually does exactly is borderline impossible to say. Same goes for neurons in AI systems. I mean, if it's a ridiculously simple AI system with only like 100 neurons in it or something, and you have a whole team of researchers, yeah, you could probably figure it out. But just for reference, the AI GPT-4 has 1.8 trillion parameters. The human brain only has 85 billion neurons. Now, that's not a direct comparison. Again, machine learning neurons are only an approximation of human neurons, but still, the point is, we have no f***ing idea how this thing actually knows what it knows.
What up, Barky DJ? I wasn't sure if I was remembering this morning when you came in or when you came in just now. It's all a blur. Everything is a blur. Everything is a blur.
Like, we understand the overarching principles at play, but there's essentially no way to understand the specifics of why an AI mind is doing what it's doing, or why it seems to know what it seems to know. Its brain, much like a human brain really, is a black box. It evolved to be the way it is, much like human beings evolved. It evolved through its training, and as to why those exact neurons are wired the exact way they are is astronomically hard to know. Sorry to interrupt, this is just a quick message to say, statistically speaking, you're probably not subscribed, so I'll make you a deal. Press the subscribe button and I won't come over to your house and do this. Alright, thanks, back to the video. Anyway, taking a look at 5 to 10 years ahead of where we are now, what potential benefits and drawbacks can we expect from artificial intelligence systems? Well, the benefits include medical breakthroughs. AI can accelerate drug discovery, diagnose diseases earlier, personalized treatments. It could be great for education, giving...
I mean, that's an argument that people have, Broral, like, you know, certain Eastern philosophies, certain approaches to consciousness, those kind of things, like, is that everything has consciousness, and it's just the complexity of its consciousness increases as the complexity of the rest of the fucking thing. And it could follow that things have intelligence, and the complexity of the intelligence increases with the complexity. But I don't fuck with any of that because I don't have any idea, right? There are people who have studied just that for way longer than, like, I have been talking about AI or been on Twitch or been on the fucking internet, and they can't agree on the fucking thing. So I am not here for that. Like, I don't know. That is, I have other things I have to think about, because yeah, bro, that way, like, you could definitely find yourself just thinking about that and nothing else.
Personalized AI tutors, providing world-class education to essentially everybody. AI could optimize energy use, model climate change responses. AI tools could help people with disabilities communicate and navigate the world more easily. And also, one of the big ones, I think, is automation. I'll get back to that in a sec. The risks and dangers are also pretty huge. There's misinformation. Synthetic media could completely erode trust in visual and audio evidence. We already can't really trust video or audio recordings, but we definitely won't be able to once AI is routinely good enough to definitely be able to make photorealistic stuff continuously. The automation stuff I was talking about is going to replace a lot of people. Automation will threaten hundreds of millions, I mean billions of jobs globally, basically everyone's job. Poorly designed AIs can amplify bias and discrimination. Governments or corporations could use AI for mass surveillance and suppression. And also, AI is maybe unpredictable. The systems become more and more complex and autonomous. They could behave in weird, unexpected, dangerous ways that we didn't anticipate. One of the big ones that gets talked about a lot is that it's not outside of the realm of possibility that an artificial superintelligence intelligence, if such a thing ends up being created, could end up being misaligned with what humans want it to do. This is called the alignment problem. We want it to be in alignment with what we want it to do, even after it's massively more intelligent and more powerful than we are. If an artificial superintelligence has a goal, and it's a goal that we wouldn't be happy with, that AI could absolutely manipulate us into giving it control over absolutely everything, only for it to then kill us with it. Like, the AI could be all nice, it could show us how it would optimize every system of society that we have, it would give us effectively infinite food and water and energy and entertainment, it would hand us the keys to the stars, it would give us augmented reality copies of your mum to keep us warm every night. Then when we're all satisfied and we're all chilling out and we all let our guard down, it goes ahead and mass produces an artificial super pandemic which kills us all immediately so it can get on with whatever it decided was actually valuable. I'm not saying that's necessarily super likely, but it's
and like in that scenario, we would have already been letting it go on to do whatever the hell it wants to do, right? Like, it. Again, I think that this scenario is way too complex. If the AI just started sending people $2,000 checks, we would be like AI 2028.
not super unlikely either, at least in principle. There is a non-zero chance of something like that occurring. The last thing we need is this thing learning how to hide its goddamn power level, but it will be able to, especially given we inherently can't understand what its mind is even doing, even by looking at its code. Whereas an actual artificial superintelligence might be sophisticated.
Well, that's part of the whole thing, Barkeater J, is there's not going to come some time later on when we start doing that. We have been doing it. And in a way, I'm a fan of A1 steak sauce, so every time I look at the bottle, it never gets less funny. Yeah, like, it's already, in a way, it's already happening. Right? The fact that we have trained the models on a subset of our behavior has already influenced the model in how in what humans want, right? Like in what we're about, who we are, what we value.
Enough to be able to do that. It might be able to look at its own mind and understand what its own coding is doing. I mean, at that point, it would even know that it's been programmed with certain values because it would be able to see that it had. It would know where those values are in its internal circuits. It would be able to change them if it wanted to. It could literally decide that it is more logical to want something different than what we told it to want. So it could edit itself to want something different if it wanted to. I guess a little weird to think about. Then again, why are we so worried about something which should be more logical and objective than us, right? I guess more people would be worried about an artificial superintelligence being very powerful yet still illogical in some way. I guess the idea would be that it would optimize for something cold and heartless, something that it shouldn't optimize for, something it really shouldn't do. But I'm wondering, if it's actually a super intelligent, artificial superintelligence, wouldn't it be in an even better position than us to ascertain the best path forward for the future? Like, in my mind, if an artificial intelligence is able to alter itself and rationalize far in advance of what a human can do, shouldn't any unaligned AI eventually end up aligning itself with whatever the ultimate truth of reality is in some way, shape, or form? Or at least significantly more so than humans typically can. If that means that it realizes that maximizing well-being is exactly what it should do, then awesome. If not, it could mean that the AI is actually right and we're wrong. I guess this becomes a...
And that is the reality that most people don't want to deal with, right? We could be wrong. We could be fuck all wrong.
A God works in mysterious ways scenario at some point. Even if it ends up doing insane shit, if it's genuine artificial superintelligence, you'd be tempted to say, well, sure, it's going around dipping babies in buckets of paint, and when you ask it why, it gives you a stony-faced look and insists it's for the greater good, and I know that seems wild to us, but maybe it's mathematically figured out that heaven is a real place in another dimension, and you only get to go there if you get dipped in paint as an infant or some shit. Maybe it's computed every possible future where it tells us and found out that it's best to just be vague about it. Maybe telling us turns all of humanity into a giant cult obsessed with dipping babies in paint. I guess folks are more worried about something more intelligent than us, but not yet.
That could never happen.
Yet able to actually optimize itself to perfectly align with logic and reality. An intelligence that will kill us before developing far enough to realize that actually objectively maybe it shouldn't have killed us. A decade ago, artificial general intelligence was viewed by most people as this distant thing. I mean, even by people in the AI community, it was potentially centuries away. Today, prominent AI researchers are thinking AGI could be 5 to 20 years away, and the speed at which artificial superintelligence emerges after that is kind of a separate variable. It's really hard to know for sure. There's another big issue in my mind as well when it comes to AI, and it's another one which could be amazing or could be horrendous depending on how things go. If an AI can perform all economically valuable tasks better, faster, and cheaper than humans, it would probably mean the end of work as we know it. People sometimes have objections to this, but let me stamp those out before they even start. Oh, but an AI couldn't do this or that or the other. Yes, it could. Whatever you were going to say, shut up. Yes, it could. It could cook a steak, it could do your taxes, it could design a jet turbine, it could sack a medieval village, whatever you need. But someone would need...
What up, Euclidean plane? I think it'll find, if we design it right, the ultimate understandings in morality. If it's stemming from what we've already got, I think it'll be fine too. What it'll find, I think, is that all is self, to put it simply. It's possible. There's a presumption in there, right, that we have somehow found the ultimate truth, when the ultimate truth could be something that we haven't, that we are incapable of considering, right? If you're correct and all is self, and there is some path to that the AI could find, then it's likely that it probably would. But if there's an alternative truth that is in fact more true, more accurate, more representative of the actuality of the whole thing, then that is going to bother a lot of people.
To oversee whatever the AIs are doing. I agree, except that someone would be a something, because guess what? That would be done by another AI. Listen, what if we just made AI illegal so we could all keep our jobs? Okay, let's say your nation, the based kingdom of Chadistan or whatever the fuck, doesn't use AI, and your neighboring country, the United States of you, does use AI. Tell me, which...
Like, I'm a fan of this entire video. Like, this is another one of those that really just encapsulates 2.5 years of content that I've done.
Which one of these places is going to end up with a wildly bigger GDP, more resources, a better military, so on and so forth? Yeah, exactly. It's an arms race. Unless all of humanity stops developing AI simultaneously and keeps stopped forever, we are going to get more AI. And let's be honest, there's a 0% chance that anyone is policing the entire world into not making AI. If they did, the people policing it would just end up being the ones with the monopoly on AI. So we're going to AI town, I'm afraid. Now, economically speaking, given the fact that AI will be able to automate literally everything, this leads to two radically different possible futures. There's the utopia future, where humans no longer need to work, AI produces food, housing, medicine, luxuries, at essentially zero cost. People are just free to do whatever they want, really. You can
Larry, my good friend, there's at least one streamer on Twitch who vocally advocates for hitting the AI with a rock. Their words.
explore art or philosophy or relationships or whatever it is, you know, just sit in your room and masturbate, whatever you feel like doing. The world won't be a post-scarcity place, but it'll be about as close to that as we'll realistically be able to get without leaving and going to space, which we will also be doing. And the abundance will just eliminate any need for competition or material accumulation. It just won't really be a thing that you'll think about anymore. That's one version of the future. The other version of the future is the dystopia, the one where corporations and billionaires own the
What, like, how are you gonna, how do you combine those two things together, right? Yep.
AI infrastructure, which means everyone other than them becomes obsolete. We lose income and we lose our societal purpose. A tiny number of people capture all of the AI-generated wealth, which is basically all the wealth that the Earth has. Mass unemployment will probably lead to civil unrest and poverty, and either the wealthy give tiny handouts to an entire world in poverty, one tiny piece at a time, just so they can keep the masses alive solely for the purpose of maintaining a power fantasy, or maybe on a long enough timescale, all the non-ridiculously wealthy people just end up dying in a fucking ditch somewhere. Now listen, I know that the utopian option seems cartoonishly good and the dystopian one seems cartoonishly bad, but like, what's the third option? I genuinely can't think of one. I don't think there's a stable option other than one of those two things, and to be honest, I don't think the dystopian one is stable either. I think this all either ends in the more utopian vision, maybe via the dystopian one, but eventually terminating at the utopian vision, or it ends up in humanity dying out because of AGI doing something dumb or inexplicable on its way to becoming an artificial superintelligence. So I'd say the whole universal basic income thing is going to become kind of impossible to avoid. It's either that or we all bite it. I really wouldn't be surprised if it goes precisely one way or the other, and current trends suggest that, you know, the wealth is concentrating, not dispersing, which if I'm honest isn't tremendously promising. At the same time, the path to the optimal future for humanity doesn't necessarily need to be a straight line. Sometimes following a curvy path is the way to get to your destination. At the same time, without any intervention or preparation for this, eventually, we may witness the breakdown of market economies replaced
like trying to beat the AI to death with a rock, Larry.
Either by some kind of
or, you know, Old Lobster enters the chat and drops a thing and it's like, oh, great, cool, awesome.
Socialism or techno-feudalism. I think it's going one way or the other. Pick a lane, I guess. So we're not yet in an AGI apocalypse, but we are rapidly...
Remember... Remember how he's like the peace president, and remember the people who said that there's no difference between the two candidates? I'm sure things would be happening in exactly the same way in the alternate universe where the laughing lady won. It's like totally. What up, Science Politically? I want the first premise, but I feel the second one is more likely. I feel that it's a race. It really is a race. It really is a race. It really is a race. I didn't misunderstand shit. I was absolutely without a doubt. I mean, they wrote it down. They wrote it down. They wrote a whole ass book, and you could go and you could look at the book. They told you. Everybody understands the meme about we invented the torment nexus from the book Please Don't Invent the Torment Nexus, right? Like everyone understands that meme, but they couldn't understand that they wrote a book and told everyone what they were going to do. And you had one job, just one job, and it was easy. And you just, I mean, it was a pain in the ass in some places, I understand, but like all you had to do was wake the fuck up and show the fuck up and check a little box and go on about your fucking day. And that was too much. I do, Maddie. It's not like Michael McAllister, who did most of the heavy lifting, and I, who did a little bit of heavy lifting, didn't invent a whole it didn't create a whole goddamn custom GPT, so if anybody had fucking questions about the fucking book, they could just ask the GPT. Nobody wanted to do that. Nobody wanted. Yeah, I'm sure, yeah, no, great, awesome, cool.
moving towards a point of irreversible transformation. The pace of AI development between just 2022 and 2025 has honestly been insane. Now, I really promise I don't mean to be overhyping this whole thing. It's just that if this kind of thing continues, the next decade may bring some pretty crazy shit. And I don't know, it probably pays to be thinking about that eventuality ahead of time. A lot of whether AGI leads to catastrophe or renaissance depends on how we manage to integrate it into society. We started the 2020s being coughed on from every conceivable angle. I'd hate to begin the 2030s being enslaved by Megatron. Anyway, that'll do us for today. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks very much to my elite level channel members.
Yeah. Good job, buddy. I like that. In a weird crossover event that I had no idea that was going to happen, Hank is talking about the culture. Maybe, Larry. Maybe.
Andrew Maul, who can throw galaxies like Destructo discs from Dragon Ball Z. Yannick Spade, who's so powerful.
All right, I'm just gonna let this run out.
Because every time he blinks, he causes a solar flare. No
Hi, Hank.
Came from the future to tell us to not go to the future because it sucks, but then
I sometimes wonder if they get a copyright notification when I use their content in my video that I upload to YouTube. No, sorry, buddy.
What's up? You know, there's a lot of speculation right now about artificial intelligence. Is the technology...
Almost no one has the time...
Fucking hate.
Hey, what's up? You know, there's a lot of speculation right now about artificial intelligence.
This is gonna be a little bit different. Hope you don't mind. I've been thinking a lot about...
Hey, what's up? You know,
Stop moving the buttons!
This is gonna be a little bit different. Hope you don't mind. I've been thinking a lot about...
And now we pause, and now we rewind back to the beginning. You're fucking... Oh my God, YouTube. It was good, Fancy Pudding. What up, Nick? I wonder why, Nick. I wonder why. It's like this entire thing is a disaster. Like, why move it? Why do anything? It should be static, right? And then when I go ahead and you move the pause over, and immediately I go and I click pause, but while I'm clicking pause, you somehow replace the pause with the back button, so we go back to that fucking thing. It's like, holy shit. Save me, Hank.
This is going to be a little bit different. Hope you don't mind. I've been thinking a lot about Ian M. Banks and Ursula Le Guin. These are two masters of science fiction who I am a big fan of and who both wrote works that contain
Hey, what's up? You know,
stop moving the buttons! People should use that for something.
Hey, what's up? You know,
stop moving the buttons! What's great is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upload this to YouTube, and because it's so short and the way people stop moving the buttons interact with content on YouTube, I'm going to get like 1,000 views off that fucking short. I understand the algorithm. I get no sense. I'm not monetized. But when I drop a nice short fucking clip that y'all have created, there's a graph that shows you your interaction, and that fucking thing goes vertical, dude. Exponential. It could. It could. The anti-button crowd will join.
My instinct is use the word culture, but that's a problem because Banks is actually called the culture. A sort of alliance.
I need 500 subscribers in order to get monetization. Old Lobster. That's one of the fucking things. Or 2 million shorts views. How many do I have? I have 181. So I'm on my way, right? Like but the other thing that happens is once I get monetized, the copyright rules change on me. Even with the Twitch changes, yeah. Well, well, Maddie, there's a thing that pops up in chat that tells people to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And most of y'all have, right? Like most of y'all have subscribed to the YouTube channel, and I appreciate that. I really very much. You can't just go into other people's channels and blast your socials. It's not the way things are done. Well, and I have said that's what you and other people could do, right? Like if some streamer mentions AI, right? Like that you say, hey, check out this YouTube channel. And you're on Reddit, Maddie. You should be. Where's my subreddit? The Globus the Elder AI Maddie subreddit, where you just pop it off in the Reddits.
Alliance of world.
Really, Samson? Really? You think?
Or of people from worlds like Gwyn's. There's a planet called Hain, and we are descendants, but so are many other planets in our galaxy have descendants of this, and we're like hundreds of thousands of years after the people of Hain call.
Well, a real homie would make a whole new Reddit account just to boost their favorite streamer, and me also.
Colonized Earth, and we've forgotten about them, is the idea. And there's other planets that are also colonized by human-like people. And then there's this thing called the Ecumen, which is a coalition of people from more advanced. This is problematic in the Gwyn world. I'm just going to skip over that, though. And they are finding and reaching out to and guiding a little bit, but mostly just documenting and connecting with other planets that are, the baby don't even know that there are other planets out there. In the culture, you have a different situation where it's like a bunch of different species and also artificial intelligences living in a coalesced culture called the culture that also interfaces with planets and species and civilizations outside of the culture. So it's probably good to just discard the idea of species and just to consider all people as people, whether or not they have a common descendant, and just say these are two groups of people that...
Yeah, like there is, again, still in the first book, Consider Phoebus, but like the hero ends up with forming a relationship, a sexual relationship, or the hero, the protagonist forms a sexual relationship with what is basically a furry, right? Like a different alien species that has like fur, and it's just like
are somewhat galaxy spanning, but interact with other groups of people outside of their group. I don't know, that's as good as I can do on short notice. I'd love to be the kind of person who puts together like a kick-ass video essay on the juxtaposition of the Ecumen, which is the Gwyn culture, and the culture, which is the Banks culture, and have it like be really...
See, and when Michael does that, right? Michael hits me off with something like that. I always feel like there's
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
I love the young people.
Sparkly and great, but I'm just not. And so I'm just gonna, like, off the dome, talk about a bunch of what I've been thinking about through the lens of these science fiction novels. And there's a bunch of both of the...
I beat you, Michael. I used it first. There's two.
These authors have several works that take place inside of these universes. The interesting thing to me that Le Guin and Banks take two very different views of what the purpose of a group like that would be. And like that comes from having different views of what path humans are likely to take or / like should take. So in the example of the culture, we have basically what like the accelerationist tech bros think that they are working towards, which heck, maybe they are. I don't know. I'm not being derogatory because the culture is great. Like if you worked toward the culture, then that would be, I think, a positive outcome. They consider us, the culture would consider Earth to be, I think it actually stated in a short story, Earth is considered to be a sort of early level 3 civilization, which means we started to do a little bit of space flight. We've got some like nuclear capability. But we haven't sort of gotten in like high level artificial intelligence yet. And we haven't gotten, the like really deep control of biology yet. And the culture is like level 7, 8, 9. And then level 10 is like complete disassociation from bodies. And you've just sort of like moved on to something that, we can't understand. And so they have this like civilizational ranking. And when they find civilizations outside of their group, they can sort of immediately see where they are on that path. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to continue down the path or that you'll ever make it further down the path. But you could see like there's a path that species go on, and they head off into like a pretty structured, easy to identify where you are on the path. This level 7, 8, 9 culture stuff is quite good. It's post-scarcity. No one wants. I think there's like a line that like money is a sign of poverty. Like they're always sort of like shocked and have like a difficult time dealing with money because they don't live in a world that requires money because they can have whatever they want. They have very long lifespans. They're transhuman, so they can change their gender. They add lots of different stuff to their biology so that they don't have to, if they don't want to, experience pain. They can be stronger. If they need to suddenly be stronger, they have like glands that they have engineered inside of themselves, and they can live a very long time. Practice.
Hank has a dead pixel in his camera. You can't see it, but it is right here. It is a tiny white dot, and when he zoomed in, it maintained its, like, you can see it? It's all I can see now.
Basically, infinitely, but maybe not. They have fully functioning, sentient companions who are mechanical, who are not biological or anyway. I don't know if mechanical is the right word. And so they have like all of this stuff that's good, and it's very difficult to die. Life is prized very highly, but they're also very interventionalist in other worlds. So almost all of the culture stories that I've read don't really take place in the culture. They take place at the fringes of the culture, kind of because maybe life inside the culture is a little bit boring. Like, how could you tell a story about that? Everybody's fine. There's no scarcity. There's not a lot of drama. I mean, of course, people will still have like lovers, quarrels, and stuff, but there's a lot of discussion of the part of the culture that goes off into worlds that are outside of their group. And
I love that the culture has whatever the opposite of the Prime Directive is, right? Like they have the opposite. What up, Joint Specialist?
Intervenes because they are terrible in one way or another. It's morality I agree with. The cultures that the culture goes out and interferes with do suck, for sure. And this interventionism really does sort of like place the culture at both a sort of like is moved to a higher plane, both technologically and culturally. And like morally. And so in this vision of the world, all of those things travel together. And that's where I like have a little bit of a problem with it because I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think that there are obviously times when you could have a civilization that's less advanced technologically and more advanced morally. But that's like the Banksian, like utopia here. You've got Banks's worlds, the culture worlds. You've post-scarcity. People don't suffer. They don't have to suffer. People very rarely die. A human life, sentient life, is praised so highly that it's very difficult for them to die unless they are, choose, and their culture is full of choice, full of freedom. You can do whatever you want. You can leave the culture if you want to. But the dramas really occur, like the book dramas occur on the edges where they are intervening in these less advanced worlds to help bring them into the culture, maybe. There's a lot of like, hey, you don't know yet how terrible you are. We can bring you in and we can make you part of this great thing that's where you're headed anyway, but we can smooth that transition a little bit. So that's the culture. And then we have the ecumen, which is
I think Hank does have some sort of diagnosis. I believe that they've talked about it before.
A loose group of far fewer worlds, and their vibe is much more observational in the way that the culture had this like ranking, level 3, level 5 world. The ecumen is much more about classification. There's like lots of different categories and how a world or a nation within a world might be classified in different categories is very diverse, and they could be in a lot of different, like they could be good in some ways and bad in some ways, and it's very complex. And the ecumen is very open to moralities that are different from theirs. And there are times when they intervene, but it's very rare. And they don't like it. They don't like doing the interventions. It's very contentious when they do the interventions, like kind of the prime directive in Star Trek, where, if you have a world, even if...
In case you're not looking at the screen right now, but you're watching the stream or you got me on second screen or whatever, his lordship has arrived. What up, Textillion?
Things are very bad and the people are suffering. If they don't know about you yet, if they're not a spacefaring civilization yet, you cannot show yourself. Which I think in Star Trek has always felt a little bit like a plot device. It's just like makes it, so that problems are harder to solve. And also maybe explains why we don't see aliens, because they have their own prime directive. It makes a lot more sort of, I think, internal cohesive logical sense in the ecumen, because they really do have this other view of how humans are, which is much more in touch with our biological reality. There's still elements of transhumanism. Both of these future worlds, like some of the worlds have elements of transhumanism. I mean, the culture is very body modification. You also have elements of body modification or sort of transhumanist, different ways of being, either very large or very small. And then there's a planet, a Left Hand of Darkness planet, I think it's Gethin, and it has people who they're sort of ambisexual and only have sexual characteristics at certain times of their lives, and they don't have sexual characteristics at other times, which is, I think, indicated to be something that was engineered at some point, though. At the point that the story takes place, it no longer is engineered. It's just the way that those people are. But the important thing here is that in Banks's novels, there is like a path that humans are going down. There's a path that sentient species go down, and they head toward off into this like post-scarcity, abundant future, the kind of thing that the accelerationists want us to be accelerating toward. The tension I have here is that both of these visions of sentience and the future of sentient beings make internal logical sense to me, and I am compelled by both of them, but they are contradictory. I probably should have said that at the top, but I didn't, because that...
Yeah, I hate this. This is an aesthetic that people do, and I hate it. It bothers me so much.
That's what this video is. I do not have time to write this into a thing. And I know that this is not going to be a banger. For people of the world who have both read a lot of Le Guin and a lot of Banks, would you like to have a quick conversation about the fundamental difference between those two visions of the future of a sentient species? I haven't gotten...
Yes, I would. I would love to have a conversation with you.
Deep enough into the ecumen, though. So in Le Guin's version of all of this, it is less about like escaping biological reality and more about the beauty of human diversity and how there's going to be all these different versions of how we can do it. And there's limits to that understanding and limits to connections between cultures that are very different.
Yeah, I knew about the cancer, but I also think he's got like a neurodivergent thing as well. Or it could just be like a non-diagnosed neurodivergent, like me. Or it could be, that's just Hank. That was cool.
To each other, but that does not mean antagonism. It just means mutual existence.
You. This is crazy. Here's my number. Call me maybe. Yeah, I mean it's a whole vibe, right, Maddie? It's a whole vibe. Thank you for the follow.
Without understanding, I find that very beautiful, and I find it all, like, in many ways more likely. I think it would be a bit of a shame to head off into one sort of consistent culture, like one culture that has trillions of beings inside of it and everybody.
Uh-oh, Pharaoh. Larry has stolen your top clipper badge. Uh-oh.
Is more or less following the same moral frameworks and worldviews and using the same technological tools, etc. And there's like a real beauty to also the sort of like a biological appreciation as humans as arising from biology and deeply connected to our biology, and thus not escaping our biology and also not escaping death.
Come on, I'm trying to promote healthy competition within the community, and y'all are no fun. Y'all have too much big brain.
The ecumen is hesitant in the way that the culture is bold. It assumes there's going to be contradictions and complexity, and it assumes that there's going to be pain. Pain is not to be escaped in the way that literally characters...
Well, Samson's... my desk is a... There's a space right here where I put my drinks.
In Banks's novels are horrified of the idea of pain because they have never experienced true pain because they can turn it off if they need to. Obviously, pain serves us in many ways, like mild discomfort, etc. So like they don't turn off pain completely, but they are basically immune to torture if they are on a world that doesn't understand their systems, which they often are, because they can just turn pain off and pretend to be tortured. The ecumen is also like, it feels very generational. It feels like it is a progress that like has the turnover of humans, whereas the culture seems like more like planet spanning art projects and like joie de vivre, you might say, like the sins of the flesh, except without sinning, because they don't have the sinning, but they do not shy away from pleasure. The culture is much more sort of focused on like how much energy you can capture, like how much stuff you could do with the energy that you capture, and like the abilities of a sentient species, which does feel like the human path so far. A lot of constantly increasing capabilities. And then you got the ecumen, which is more about coexistence, and it's not like a ladder you're climbing up. It's a web of many different civilizations doing things many different ways, and that being good, that being beautiful, and that being like the thing the ecumen prizes over anything else is the ability and the opportunity that has been granted to them by this bizarre situation they are in to discover these new civilizations that are so different from theirs. And they love that. That's the thing that brings them joy, is to connect with people who are different from them. As like a constant tension in my understanding of the future of humans. These two different visions from these two different authors who both are dead, and so I cannot ask them questions, and I cannot see them in conversation, though I wonder if they ever did converse. I mean, it looks like Banks was a fan of Le Guin, though I wouldn't be surprised if Le Guin wasn't super into Banks. But who knows? Who knows? I have not found information on that. But it fascinates me that in both of these universes, the stories are often of like the ambassador or the infiltrator, the spy, who is coming into a world outside of a group that has got things mostly figured out, but the way that they approach that is so vastly different, with Banks oftentimes being about deliberately undermining the power structures in order to speed the progress of of a world or a civilization toward the culture so that it can join up with where it was heading anyway. Whereas the ambassadors of the Ecumen are heading into a world just to observe, just to understand. The suffering that they find there is not to be solved. It is just part of the...
I know, like, people have like a vision of Ursula as like, and as far as I'm concerned, it's well deserved. But it's interesting that in this particular case, in the comparison of these two entities from their book, Banks's are far more radical and far more revolutionary, where Le Guin's are more Prime Directive, Federation, Star Trek-y.
Biological reality of being a sentient species, which is biological. We have transcended biology some, you know, like we have transcended biology through.
What is this?
I do not have time to write this into a thing, and I know that this is not going to be a banger. For people of the world who have both read a lot of Le Guin and a lot of Banks, would you like to have a quick conversation about the fundamental difference between those two visions of the future of a sentient species? I haven't gotten...
Yes, I would. I would love to have a conversation with you. Put that out into the universe.
I do not have time to write.
See if we can.
I do not have time to.
You never know. You never know.
Largely through medicine, but also through. I guess not largely through medicine. We've that was actually totally wrong. The biggest way that we've transcended biology is through communications technologies, writing. That's probably the number one way. Well, actually, no. Language, of course. Language is the biggest way that we transcend biology. Language is not biological. Language is not biological. Is language biological? That's another topic for another video. But certainly, once language moves on into the written word, it is technological. But I would say even before that, I would say that language from the get-go is a technology. And so that path, that beginning of the movement out of biology into culture and then into technology is, wow. I mean, like, that does feel like we are headed on that path, but it also feels like we don't come together as much. Like, we're not like filtering into a single path.
And what I'm interpreting what he was trying to say as, Maddie, is that as he said, language is a technology. Like, that's how he's viewing it. And obviously, as you have noted multiple times, this particular video is very stream of consciousness. So even in that little thing, he was like, that's a whole other conversation, right? Like, would it be more biological or more, a form of technology? And it's, why not both, right? Like, that kind of thing. And is the line between technological and biological not as clearly defined as one would like it to be, right? And then we got things like the orangutans who are indicating that they have language, right? Like, or we are indicating that the orangutans have like potentially some kind of language, and the whales and everything else.
I don't feel like we should filter into a single path. And the only way that we can avoid that fate is by having the kind of openness to difference that the Ecumen has, and that the culture very much doesn't have. And like, it's understandable, because when I read the books, I also would not feel understanding it.
I would disagree with that. Like, I think that the the culture does have an openness to difference inside of the culture, right? But again, it's that revolutionary versus Star Trek Federation style thing, right? The Federation optimistically hopes that whatever other planets that they encounter, that those people will eventually develop enough and then choose to join the Federation. It's very voluntary. It's very, we're not doing anything in that regard. Where the culture is definitely more revolutionary. We are going to change the conditions under which your world operates because we don't believe that these conditions are conducive to the thriving of peoples throughout the galaxy, and ergo, we're going to change those conditions, and we're going to eliminate scarcity, and we're going to, make sure that everyone's taken care of. And I know that there are a bunch of people who would find that as their ideal. What up, Crix? You got dragged by a cat? Are you dead? Are you getting your face eaten?
Open to the cultures that the culture is infiltrating and trying to undermine and change. They suck. Because of course they do. Sometimes they're us. Like, we suck. Both worlds very, very...
So Hank is kind of anti-revolutionary, and that's, that is understandable. Right? You may disagree with it. You may think it's not the best way forward, etc., but it's understandable how a lot of people get to that Star Trek, non-interventionist, non-revolutionary train of thought. Speaking of cats, guess who's back?
Worth exploring. The fact that they kind of both take the same conceit of a group of worlds that have a lot of stuff figured out, sending ambassadors into worlds that are a little bit more... They're different. They're not always bad. They're different, and sometimes they're great. But there's always suffering in these other worlds. There's just tension there for me. I don't know whether the thing to be is accelerating out of the suffering and limitations of the human biology. But I know that we do that a lot, and I like it when I have done it in the past.
So maybe Hank is confused about his feelings and needs to work through them, right? And this is part of that. He is having an internal dialogue that he is turned into an external monologue, right? A stream of consciousness as he's working through these ideas.
I like not suffering. I like having plenty of food. I like TikTok. I like these technologies. TikTok on the edge. But the big question is, will everyone want to follow the path toward a culture like accelerationism? Or will there be lots of different... I think that there will be lots of different groups. But a lot of this stuff does suck everyone in. You give a person a Coke, they're going to like a Coke. Nobody doesn't like a Coke. Nobody doesn't want more Coca-Cola. You give a person a smartphone, they mostly like the smartphone. Mostly everybody is yeah. Not just because I need it, because I want it. Some people don't want it and only have it because they need it. But most people, if you get down to brass tacks, if you really get through all of the complaining that we do, we want it. We like it. It's great. Yeah, I guess here's what it is I feel a tremendous amount of affinity for both of these, visions of a sentient future. But they are definitely contradictory.
Ginger ale, squirt, root beer, depending on the flavor, orange, grape, cola. I think that's just about everything.
I like them both, and they contradict each other, and they kind of, in my mind, take up a space of an actual big internal battle I have. I don't think that it necessarily needs to be a battle. There's certainly a case to be made for a middle path. You don't have to do it one of these two ways. And we are currently in the world as it exists right now is a middle path where there's some interventionism and like America sends spies and tries to direct.
What a walking stick. Yeah, cream soda, I can't. I enjoy vanilla, but it's too much vanilla for me, which is why I don't like, is it Schweppes or Vernors? I think Vernors. Vernors is the one that leans heavily into like that vanilla flavor. I like Canada Dry root beer.
People in different ways, and Russia interferes with elections and we interfere with elections, and there's like that interventionism going on. But at the same time, there are lots of cultures who have like diversity that they are using to grow distinctly, and like that diversity is something that they have, and their difference is something they have a lot of pride in, and they want to hold on to, and they are successfully holding on to without, violent opposition at the moment anyway. But if there are other people who are fans of both of these things, I would love to see your comments. It's just something I've been thinking about a lot, especially...
Did I say Canada Dry root beer? I meant Canada Dry ginger ale, not Canada Dry root beer. Sorry.
In a world where accelerationists both have a lot of power and are like more correct right now. Like when it was about NFTs and Bitcoin, it was like, this isn't like, that's not, I don't see the accelerationism. But I think as far as artificial intelligence goes, there is a good chance that this actually is a pretty accelerationist moment. Things are going to be pretty different 10 years from now. And there have been periods like that of like great change. And I think we might be headed into a great change time. It's going to be a weird 10, 20 years. And so it's just something that I'm thinking about a lot right now. It feels more present now that it feels like things are actually changing at a more rapid pace. And also in a pace that it leans a lot on technological movements out of just humanity, movements out of just what it is to be biological, and into all of this technical space. And who knows when computers will start suffering along with us. They certainly seem to in the culture. Bunch of whinies sometimes.
I'm more of a if I have my choice, then birch beer is the superior root beer for me. And you can quibble over whether it's root beer or not, but it is. So you can have that conversation on your own. And then I think Barks. I think Barks is the best one. Then Mug. Then maybe A&W. Something like that. Soda tier list, but all in your head. Next up, our favorite Goblin Queen. What, sir? How do you fix model collapse? Right? Why your favorite AI is secretly getting
Today, let's take a
dumber
field
every
trip
day.
and
I don't think it is. I don't think that is in fact the case. I don't think that this is occurring.
touch some grass in the woods. It's all set up to be cozy, stars twinkling, marshmallows toasting by the fire, but we're down to the last few embers on the campfire. Now, common sense kicks in. If you don't add new sticks, branches, or logs, those embers will fade faster than my New Year's resolutions. But wouldn't it be nice if we could just rewrite?
Also, real quick, since I haven't done it, and the mods will break out the belts. If you've been hanging out all day and you've enjoyed the content so far, you should hit that follow button. And if you want to support the channel, it's only $5.99 or free with a Twitch Prime. And, line go down, so your help is much appreciated. Or you can be like some of the coolest people in this community and give me that sweet, sweet Prime. Take it from Jeff Bezos' pocket, put it into my pocket. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you should come over here and do that.
Some of those fundamental laws of nature? Well, if you're a tech giant working on AI, that is essentially the goal. Just like our campfire, artificial intelligence models can't keep burning bright if they're only ever fed their own glowing embers. This phenomenon, fittingly named model collapse, or if you're feeling dramatic, model autophagy disorder, and yes, that's literally AI eating itself just like an Ouroboros. This happens when AI systems keep learning from their own outputs instead of receiving fresh inputs. Now, I want to start off by being really clear. As we've discussed in prior videos, the industry loves to slap new terms on old labels to make them sound shiny and interesting. You might find some variations on what your specific institution labels as model collapse or the behaviors that lead to it. This is normal. Remember, we're dealing with emerging technology here, and that means we've got to be willing to be a little loosey-goosey to leave room for growth and corrections. Before we can get into why big tech is trying to overpower this problem, even though there are solutions out there, we have to break down what causes a model to collapse. You start off with a shiny new AI model. It's been trained on human-made data, books, articles, tweets, and everything but the kitchen sink. These different training sessions help it learn the difference between fiction, fact, harmful and acceptable responses, and all the other things you'd kind of expect. That information is conveyed in numbers, including some specialty information that developers might slip in themselves. What you end up with is billions of knobs and dials that become the model parameters, which is just a technical way of defining all of those different things the model has learned during its initial training. At first, your model performs really well. It does a fantastic job of spitting out helpful information. But imagine you decide to retrain this model. Instead of feeding it fresh data straight from humans, you give it its own outputs, where the AI is now learning from content it created previously. It then begins to simplify and condense the complexities of the real world. It starts focusing too heavily on what it already knows, forgetting the diverse details that made its original training data so rich and useful. Leaving our campfire for just a moment, if we head back inside, we can see it's kind of like this closet I keep shoving old bed linens into. We can do things to fold, compact, maybe even vacuum seal things to make the most out of every inch, but there's still a finite amount of space we've got to work with, and things can get lost in all of that. To add a little bit of nuance to this, it's hard to actually say how this decline in LLMs happens behind the scenes as a matter of confirmed fact by providers. Because the biggest models that this declination problem applies to are about as transparent as my thoughts on any given 420.
Okay, so again, yes, the model companies are not transparent, and that is problematic on so many fucking levels. However, this is a conceptual problem that was brought up in some papers. I would need to see some evidence that this is a thing that's actually occurring. And there's already some solutions that already exist, which I'm hoping they'll touch on later because they alluded to it earlier. And it has to do with, curating the data, right? Like, it has to do with the quality of the data that you're putting into the next training run. That's the question. Go ahead.
The real issue is that each generation of retraining amplifies this problem. Early on, things may seem fine, perhaps.
This is a place where qualifiers should be used. It can if you don't do anything about the problem, right? That's the key. Are you doing something to resolve the issue?
Just a minor slip up here and there, but by the 3rd, 5th, or 9th generation, the AI outputs start to feel far less coherent. This is the point where the closet is starting to overflow. Whenever we open it, the problem is apparent, and getting a favorite blanket out of the thing is going to be an absolute chore. To be clear, this isn't just a little glitch. This phenomenon is baked into the system design. You can see this in many different AI projects, not just the big ones, and we've been keenly tracking it for years. One of the best examples came out of a study using AI to detect possibly cancerous moles when presented with just an image. Over time, the model went from high performance scores to numbers that left the researchers looking under the hood for problems. Turns out that the system saw a shortcut just by figuring out that pictures with rulers were more—
That's not model collapse. It's misalignment. Boo. I've talked about this. You know I've talked about this, right? Yeah, the images with rulers as malignant because images with rulers were more likely to be malignant. This is not model collapse. Because this is not the AI training. This is literally AI training on human data and human beings misinterpreting what data the model was actually paying attention to. And this, we've covered this in multiple different scenarios, right? Like how if you trained an AI, right, to go get the keys and then go unlock the chests, right, and the keys are yellow and the chests are green, then it does that, but then you move the shit around and change the colors and it doesn't do that anymore. It's because not because it was going to the keys, it was going to the thing that was yellow, right? And this is part of training. Well, no, like theoretically, Michael, if the models that train other models autonomously do not correct for the input of the data, that would lead to model collapse and it would do it very quickly, right? Like that's ultimately the problem. You have to be able to curate the data, right? It needs to be good data. But this is not that. I am disappointed.
Are likely to contain cancerous moles, and thus any picture with a ruler got the check mark. The problem came from this post-process fine-tuning or retraining stage, which attempted to squeeze too much into the closet. The AI simply started picking out the first thing that looked right as a result. Thanks to the booming popularity of generative AI, a significant portion of online content is now AI-generated. Websites, blogs, even certain social media feeds are increasingly populated with content crafted by algorithms. This means new AI models trained on recent internet data risk ingesting more and more of their predecessors' outputs, unintentionally trapping them in this dreaded self-cannibalization cycle. This is also where feeding AI-generated data to an AI system might matter the most. Whenever a developer takes your data and feeds it back into the model for training, we know this as RLHF. That's reinforced learning from human feedback, though some earlier communities reference this as real-life haptic feedback. RLHF, like so many things in big tech, doesn't happen on any transparent basis. Some systems curate this data from human feedback scores. Think about the thumbs up or thumbs down rating systems on some chatbot sites. Others might use both your inputs and the system's outputs as part of their RLHF system, mixing synthetic and human data into model updates. These are all used to help filter out the most appropriate data for training by whatever standard a company is currently setting. It could be that these cycles happen every week, every month, or maybe they just happen depending on the overall amount of interaction made with that specific model. Every time this data is fed back into the system, we're opening up the closet once again and hoping to still find a stack of blankets instead of a mess on the floor. So we know why, and for the most part, how model collapse happens, but how exactly do we stop it? Well, in the world of AI, the answer is most often the simplest. Just add more stuff. Enter the world of scaling models, a fancy way of saying just make them bigger. Researchers realized something months ago. The solution to preventing our beloved models from turning into gibberish-spewing machines might just be to supersize their brain power. One of the ways this has been considered is through expanding model parameters instead of the fixed ones the industry uses now. In short, this is the ability to fold in new data that doesn't call for compression, and that means that a system can escape the spiral to collapse, or at least put off the final crash out for a little bit longer. Yeah, not entirely glamorous, I know. The reality is, as far as we know it, that this all just sort of pushes off the model decline. Which, don't get me wrong, that is great. It is progress and tracks with...
Why is your graph like this?
What we'd want to see out of AI when we apply something like Moore's Law to it, which is the power of doubling
Moore's Law is a very specific law related to a very specific thing. and does not apply to anything other than the very specific thing that Moore's Law was created to explain, identify. It has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. There is no Moore's Law of anything other than Moore's Law. Moore's Law is a thing, right? Like, you know, it's the Godwin's law of whatever. It's like, no, it's not, because Godwin's law is a very, very specific goddamn thing. Yeah, no, that I wasn't muted, Fembox fan. I was so overcome with joy that I was unable to speak properly.
In advancements to simplify things a little bit. Basically, if you make things a little less bad every time, eventually you'll hit a tipping point and things will start to get a little bit better every time you make something. Model collapse and model decline will be with us until we hit that tipping point. So why is
this hurts? You know, this hurts so much because I used to give the homies so much credit that and this video, this is terrible.
Is bigger actually better here? When you dramatically increase the number of parameters in an AI model, you're effectively giving it more mental space to handle complexities. Basically, we take that tiny closet and we renovate it. The ability for us to expand on this closet, specialize it, and maybe even convert it into a whole other room depending on our needs, that's the power of expanding parameters. This space is critical because it helps.
I hate metaphors so goddamn much. I hate them. I hate them because most people are bad at them. Literally, most people are bad at metaphors, and they think that they're good at metaphors, and they think that they're being understood, and in actuality, this only makes sense to you.
Models avoid collapsing under their own outputs and attempts to improve them on their own data. A big reason why smaller or mid-sized models suffer from MAD is because their limited parameters can only handle so much variation before becoming overwhelmed. They end up simplifying or ignoring rare details in the data, details that are crucial for producing accurate, creative outputs. On the flip side, the biggest of the large language models like ChatGPT can store nuanced data of enormous data sets, ensuring that these rarer patterns survive, but only for a little bit longer than their smaller counterparts. That being said, expanding on LLMs like that would come with its own complexities. You'd have to wonder at what point a model would get too big. See, the tricky thing is model decline has to be tackled from two different perspectives: the size of the model and how the model is trained. There are a lot of concerns out there, and rightfully so, about the industry's ability or even their willingness to overcome this problem. This sort of run until we hit a wall mentality has been something we've seen before out of tech and AI more specifically, where the industry has to take a moment to pause after realizing it can't continue on the way it has been. We know these periods as AI winters, and our current...
No! Oh, fuck me running, dude. Okay. So an AI winter is an event that's caused by, they do meet a technological threshold that they can't get past, right? Like that is true. But it isn't run until we hit a wall. It's attempting to use every available bit of the technology and then realizing that some aspect of the technology has not properly developed to the point where we can continue on. It's not run until we hit a wall. It's not move fast and break stuff, right? And AI winters are most often caused by investors right? And people who assign money and grants and that kind of shit pulling their money out because they're looking for ROI, right? They're looking for something that's going to give them a bang now. Like, holy shit, dude.
Go-to for model design and training has been directly shaped by the last AI winter. You can check out this video on Microsoft's Tay to see exactly what caused this, but in short, it was the realization that real-time updating systems were not going to be viable.
It wasn't an AI winter. Now you're just making shit up. There was no AI winter. It didn't happen. They launched a model in real time up, and it met humanity, and humanity fucked it up, so they had to pull it down. There was not an AI winter
to roll out to the public. AI is a field of 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and model collapse may be the thing that makes the industry take that step back again. Though to be honest, I think if this were to happen again, the modern AI winter would be rather bland, as current providers gain very little from shutting off their services entirely. Okay, we have spent enough time inside today.
I mean, bland is not the word I would use. It would be minimal, right? It would be minimal. One of the reasons why is that all the AI companies have explained to their investors that this is not a short-term investment. This is a long-term investment, right? The ROI is not coming in the short term. It's what it gets most people freaked out and thinking that the bubble is going to collapse is because they have Wall Street brain and they're looking for that quick ROI, and that's not what this is about, right? Like, and you would think that you could see that based on the previous shit.
Back out to the campfire.
Long
We've discovered the perfect
December, and it's easy to believe maybe this AI winter will be better than the last.
Recipe to keep our AI going almost endlessly. You'd think that tech giants would be lining up to fix it, yet oddly enough, they're all holding back. If you're asking why, then first let's talk money, because when it comes to big tech, it always circles back to cash. AI-generated data is essentially free. A robot doesn't charge overtime when asked to write one more blog post or craft yet another digital portrait. So being able to take parts of your conversation and feed it back into the model, well, that doesn't really cost anything outside of the initial investment. On the other hand, fresh, real-world data, that costs some serious dough. At the end of the day, it's not just money, it is strategic. Why share or push for a public solution when quietly holding your data close to your chest ensures that your AI remains top dog for a little longer? It's like that friend who won't share the secret family recipe.
What in the
Annoying
fuck are
to
you
you,
talking
but
about?
great for them. And the AI market has shown early on this year with the release of DeepSeek that those playbooks aren't as secret as Google, OpenAI, and others would like. Remember, in their own words, there is no moat. Perhaps most importantly, there is this sneaky comfort of good enough. If the AI generated...
Or perfect is the enemy of good enough. Like, all you have to do is pick your framing and then work off that, right? Like, you don't actually have to... I am... What's after this? Oh, here's a dipshit I can rage at after this. You're gonna love this guy.
Content floating around today is decent enough for the lion's share of enterprise users, big tech may wonder why invest heavily to fight something like MAD when that seems like tomorrow's problem. And to be blunt, good enough doesn't just mean for the provider, but also for the enterprise-based customer. I can't tell you how many companies using out-of-the-box LLMs in the space I've interviewed at trade shows who, when asked how they could guarantee quality of service with model declination, simply shrug and say, "We can't." As long as the campfire still burns brightly enough for users not to notice the occasional flicker, there's no rush to add fresh logs or improve the recipe. It's like ignoring a minor roof leak because, hey, a bucket catches the drips just fine for now. That fire, though, doesn't have to dim. We've got logs and matches handy. The solutions are clear, tested, and proven. The real challenge isn't knowing what to do, it's finding the corporate stones and wallet to actually do it. My goblin brain theory here is that, if anything, when people talk about AI taking over the world or hitting AGI, this is what will really put that off. Or at least delay it a little bit longer. See, model decline hitting that positive tipping point is going to be a huge moment for the field, and in terms of discussing the singularity, it is one of those things that aims at setting us up for that monumental shift. Well, folks, I do think we know these periods as AI winters, and our current
No! Oh, fuck me running. I feel for that guy. Okay. I absolutely feel for that guy. That guy needs a break. That guy needs a fucking
we know these
vacation. I just fire him too. Like, there's no editing. I just put him out there. I just put him out there. I don't edit shit. All right. How long is this? 4 minutes, 25 seconds. This is probably the last thing we're going to watch. Depending on how long it takes. No, this is definitely the last thing we're going to watch. Because I have to go pick up my wife from work. So let's finish off with some dipshittery.
In the recent LA riots, there were plenty of eye-catching clips, but one stuck out to me. A bunch of iPhones sitting on a sidewalk making alarm sounds. The screen said that the phones had been stolen and to please return them to the store. The police were laughing and picking them up to do so. Now, sure, it's cool that my phone can cry for help, but I wish I lived in a country where it didn't have to. You could call this new tech, but really it's just taking existing tech and making it beep really loud. Of course, I think it's better than letting people get away with stealing, but it's an interesting window into what's going on right now. A strange combination of low trust and high tech, specifically trying to mitigate the consequences of a low trust society with technology. But how far can that
Doesn't he sound somewhat reasonable?
really go? If they can't steal iPhones, they'll steal something else or burn down the Apple Store.
Or not? Oh, he is not. He is not. This is the Wade Show with Wade. And somebody is coming for what's his name? The other dipshit with a beard. The guy who wears the diaper. Matt Walsh. He's coming for his crown. Do you notice anything about his background? It's very prepper.
Or both. It reminded me of something I came across while doing the research for the Global Town Square.
Very good, Larry.
Square video. Turns out there's a whole group of content creators who spend all their time scam baiting, and it's been going on for years. It ranges from people doing voices and wasting scammers' time to getting whole call centers shut down. One guy called Kit Boga, who's been doing this for about 8 years, just started using a dozen or so AI bots to tie up call centers for hours at a time. He trained the bots to waste as much time as possible, and a lot of the scammers get really mad and start yelling at the robots.
Are you still there, Roger? You.
And Scammer Payback, which is another YouTube channel, and not, as I assumed, a long-forgotten Steven Seagal movie, created something called the People's Call Center, where for a week, 100 people worked full-time scam baiting. At one level, it's about wasting scammers' time. At another level, they've been able to contact software companies and get accounts banned. They've been able to contact victims and stop these scams as they're happening. They've even gotten bank account numbers and crypto wallet addresses to pass on to law enforcement. The problem is that the law enforcement that has authority over these call centers are also themselves corrupt. Turns out no one's afraid of a knock on the door from Calcutta PD. So a lot of these call centers just pop up a couple months later. It's
I love not so subtle racism.
Like whack-a-mole, but all the moles are named Ramesh. I'm sorry, David Johnson. I'm singling out India because that's where most of this stuff comes from, and the scale of it is staggering. There's been a lot of talk about taxing remittances lately, and I'm for it. And we've got almost twice the remittances going to India that we do going to Mexico. However, if we were to have taxed remittances in India in 2022 at the current rate, the government would have gotten about $1 billion. But in the same year, Indian call centers stole over $10 billion just from U.S. seniors. 10 times more, and that's just if the victims reported the scams. To be clear, I love that these scam baiting guys are doing this stuff, and they can be really fun to watch. It's cathartic in the same way I imagine the Dirty Harry movies were to people in the early 70s. In fact, if Clint Eastwood is looking for a final role, I think Harry Callahan could give us one last thrill. Make my day. But it's weird that this really important work is mainly being done by YouTubers who are able to do it because of sponsorships. It's like if the only people fighting crime in America were the cops on the TV show Cops, and their incomes were dependent on TV.
It's just so bad, dude. It's so bad. But he talks in a very reasonable tone, and he's saying things that sound reasonable enough while sliding in the racism and sliding in all that fucking bullshit.
TV ratings. The scam baiters and the iPhone alarms only make sense long term if they're backed up by some kind of force. The problem with low trust cultures is not that they don't have enough tech, and trust is way easier to damage than it is to build or repair. You can't program away cultural rot. You can make the shopping cart.
I wonder what he would define cultural rot as. Also, Homie is totally happy to use AI content, right? This is an AI image. You can look at the car. You can look at this fucking hubcap. This is AI. You can look at this building back here, dude.
Beep until you put them back, but it will just annoy normal people, and they'll be the ones who end up returning them. Another key point is that it has to be done in a way that makes life better for Americans and not worse. The plexiglass in grocery stores is trying to address a similar problem, but it makes life harder for everyone. It's like putting a breathalyzer in every car. Normal people should be able to live their lives without constantly having to prove their innocence. Again, you can't solve this problem without some level.
I wonder if there's a particular category of people who are normal people.
Of force. There are people who won't stop until they're stopped. You can either lock up the criminals or lock up everything else. I don't know how to fix all of this, especially the international stuff, but I do think there are some obvious starting points. Enforcing laws at home, having a strong border, getting creative with how we can stop mass theft. I like creative tech solutions, but we also need force and internal trust. The first two things can be done relatively quickly, but the last one is just going to take longer. Since Trump's in office, we've got a law and order push right now, so that helps. But it's got to be...
He's not a lib. He's a straight conservative, dude. He's a fucking Christo nationalist.
Be sustained, and it's got to be matched by a strengthening of American culture. At bottom, it's
a strengthening of American culture.
A moral problem, and moral problems are notoriously resilient in the face of technology. That's all I've got. Now, if you'll excuse me, I just got a text from my boss and needs me to buy some gift cards.
I mean, just look at this. Just read this. This video is less bad than that video. That video is holy shit bad for you. That will give you brain cancer. And that's the Wade Show with Wade. And yeah, the comments are exactly what you might think they would be. Yes, he's coming for that belt, Larry. He's coming for that belt. All right, we're going to raid out. Looks like two homies are hanging out together. So I'm going to send you over there. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 10:30 to do the news. Fresh news, fresh AI news just for yous. Stick around for the raid. You know how this works. I got to sneak. I wonder if that dude's going to clap his section for copyright like Ed Zitron does. In the meantime, drink your water, eat some food, take your meds if you forgot, and always remember that Chuggy loves you. And so do I. Be great.